Hello. There we go. All right, let's get started. We'll excuse John Bear and Calvin Crandall. They are stuck in traffic. They're on their way, but it will be a while. So I am Kirk Woodward, Vice Chair, and we'll get the meeting started. Oh, hold on. We'll get the meeting started now. Been wanting to use that thing. Let's start with introductions. Steve, why don't you start over there on that side?
My name's Steve Dalton. I'm from Teasdale. Represent the southern region.
Byron Bateman. I'm from South Weber, Utah. I represent the northern region of the state.
Donnie Hunter from Cedar City. I represent the southern region.
Mike King. I'm from Price, the southeast region.
I'm Greg Sheehan, the director here with Wildlife, and I'm the executive secretary, the non-voting member up here.
So we need to approve the agenda today. Are there any questions or? Oh, yeah, good idea. Let's go through that. So rack chairs, starting with the non-rack chair, Dave Black over there.
My name's Kevin Bunnell. I'm the regional supervisor from the southern region, filling in for Dave today.
I'm Chris Wood. I am the regional supervisor for the southeastern region. I'm filling in for Kevin Albrecht. Was on fires for the Forest Service for 30 straight days and missed our last RAC meeting, so he asked me to fill in for him today.
Richard Hanson, Central Region RAC.
Randy Dirth, Northeast Region.
Don Cabot, northern region, RAC.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Now we'll approve the agenda. Are there any questions before we have a motion to approve that? Questions? Okay, I'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second that.
Get that? Call for a vote. All those in favor? Great. Thank you. Those of you that have looked over the minutes, is there any questions or additions to the minutes from last meeting? Have there been anybody give any concerns to you, Stacy? Okay. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Mike King seconds it. Call for a vote. Those who are in favor? Unanimous. I don't have anything on the old business action log that I know of that we need to go over today. Is there anything, Stacy, that you know of that we're missing? No. Okay. So we'll move on to a division update by our director.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, or Chair as it may be the case today. Normally I say we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to race through this. Today I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because we're waiting for a couple of our board members, and we don't have a real a long agenda today. I hope that we'll be done by lunchtime if all goes well.
Walk out when they get here.
Drop that gavel one more time, Mr. Chair. A couple things. I want to start with acknowledging some of the folks who never get acknowledgement here. And that's the technical folks who help put on these productions, if you will, each time we have a board meeting here. And so I'm sure I'll embarrass them, but I'm going to do that on purpose in the back of the room. So back there we have Paul Gedge, the big tall guy running the video camera right now. Terry Davis, the guy with the microphones behind the computer, and Mike Christensen, our guys. So they're all from different places here in the state, but they all help put these together for almost a year now. It'll be a year in December. We've broadcast these on our YouTube channel, made that available for hundreds of people around the state, thousands of people to watch all of these proceedings. And that's pretty exciting for people who feel like they want to be able to be a part of this and see what's going on, but don't have the ability to necessarily travel to Salt Lake. So they do a great job, and they make this work, and they've brought this in real life to our public out there. So maybe we could have a hand for those guys for all their work. For years doing this for us, so they're a well-seasoned crew. Talk about a few things. The greater sage grouse. About a week and a week ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service made a determination to have the sage grouse be not warranted as needing to be listed under the Endangered Species Act. That's a great day for the citizens of our state. About half of the sage grouse in Utah exist on private lands, half on public lands. For those on private lands, it's a good day to know that you'll be able to carry on your land practices and not have to deal with some of the challenges that come with having endangered species living on your property. On the public lands, there's been some controversy. If you've watched the news or read the paper, the federal land managers have come out with land use plans that many feel are overreaching. They've done more than what we felt like in our state plan. We have a state sage grouse management plan, and it called out efforts to protect the birds within a framework, within key areas, 11 key sage grouse management areas around the state. Many believe that these federal plans reached, above and beyond those areas and put burdensome restrictions on it. That will work its way out in time as those plans are finalized and implemented. But I think it's still important to recognize the good work that we've done developing a plan, implemented plan, the many, many years, decades of hard work that our employees, volunteers, NGOs and others have done to help protect the bird here in the state. We've seen tremendous growth in these bird populations in the last couple of years. I think that will continue. We've had some good brood rearing conditions this year, and we expect to see the numbers up again next year if conditions stand. So we'll see where it goes, but again, I think it's a good day for the state that we don't have a listing in this case. Many of you are familiar. We have an administrative rule out there that deals with administering a series of expo permits, as they're called in our rule. We have been in the process for some time of issuing a request for proposals to accept offers to receive those permits. The division has concluded our part of the request for proposals, and that is up at the state purchasing office right now. So we're awaiting the release of that. We expect that proposals will come in, and the final decision on award of those will be made by the Wildlife Board, by you as board members, and we're expecting that to be either in a December meeting or possibly an early January meeting. So that's the status of that. We'll
Greg,
keep you apprised.
Just for clarification, that's the request for proposal rule that we'll vote on, not necessarily the proposals from the entities that are interested in submitting a request.
Say that again.
So in December or January, we'll be voting on that rule or on the
We've already
actual
voted
request?
on the rule.
Okay.
So the rule calls out that we'll have an
That was
opportunity for
this
proposals to come in.
on
It
that.
was, yeah, it was last January, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it had been our intent to have that request for proposals open through the month of August. It's been delayed. I think it's finished now, and we're waiting for that to be released. So within the rule, it talks about an evaluation process and then a final determination, in this case, by the Wildlife Board. So that's how that will go, and we'll keep you apprised as that process moves forward.
Thank you.
A few other things. Around the state, Division of Wildlife is responsible for aquatic invasive species management. For most, that's management of quagga mussels, but it actually includes some plant species and other aquatic species that may make their way here into the state. For several years now, we've had an infestation of quagga mussels at Lake Powell. But I'm pretty proud to say that, and we always keep our fingers crossed when we say this, but we've been very diligent at trying to keep those out of other water bodies in the state. At this point in time, we've not identified quagga to be living in any other water bodies in the state of Utah. We have a suspect water of Deer Creek that was identified last winter from some villagers that were found there. But we've done extensive testing, diving, and other efforts to determine if there's quagga in the lake, and we haven't found that. So we've gotten through another summer. Again, I'm going to knock on wood or something to hope that we continue these great efforts. But we've put in a lot of work. Our teams that are involved with that have done a super job. We've begun the fall deer hunts. Archery, muzzleloader, soon we'll be into our rifle hunts. Really just incredible success that we're seeing out there. Mature deer, a lot more happy hunters, I believe. I don't envy anyone having to be out on the deer hunt, the muzzleloader hunt with this full moon that we've had. That doesn't make for the best of hunting, but I'll maybe save a few deer for the rifle hunters that'll be out pursuing those in a few weeks. But feeling good. It's been a long time since we've had this many deer out there, this many buck deer out there, and I think many of you have started to see the pictures and the smiling faces come in from those who were involved in our hunts so far. Saturday, the duck hunter opens. Hopefully, some of you will take advantage of that. We are continue to be on the verge, or actually at all-time highs in our waterfowl populations here in the West and in most of North America. So the good old days of ducks are now. The good old days of lots of duck hunters were in the late 70s. So what does that mean for you? It's a great time to get out after waterfowl and geese, ducks, geese, swans for those who have a permit and have an opportunity to have some good hunting with your family and friends. We're engaged in the process of a Mexican wolf recovery planning is being started by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We've been invited to attend 3 meetings that will help them scope out how this recovery process will occur. As a state, we have some frustrations with how that process is lining up and who some of the folks are that the Fish and Wildlife Service have chosen to head up these planning efforts. Marty Bushman, our attorney, will talk more about that a little bit later, but we'll be asking the board to help write a letter and support of some of our concerns of how that process may unfold. And we want to make sure that we protect our state interests and use science, but use the right science in the right ways, and to really look at the geographical composition of where we believe these Mexican wolves historically had their core areas at. So.
Greg, have you talked to Arizona? Do you know what's happening there with their plight with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services?
We're actually working right now collectively with the state of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and of course Utah, and to some degree Texas, to come up with some messaging about how we'd like the service to engage this planning process that affects or has the potential to, in some way or another, affect all of our states as this species is recovered in the Southwest.
Yeah, Greg, do we know where those are going to be released if that does happen?
That's one of the things that we may be in disagreement over with them right now, is the geographical areas that they may have interest in having those Mexican wolves disperse out through. So Marty will talk a little more about that later. I think that's on the agenda later today. So we'll if we could save a few questions for that, I think that would be a better time. We've had a committee for the elk committee to develop a new statewide plan. I think that's kind of come to conclusion, and that'll be presented soon. But I wanted to let you know that I'll say it again when we present the plan, but appreciate those who put in a lot of time and effort into help develop a new state plan as we finalize that now and prepare to present that to you. I'm going to talk about our aquatics program, fishing, here in just a moment. Possibly one thing later, and I'll freak Stacy out here. We may, if we get done early today, see if we can get our board members out to the warehouse and see about getting them a few uniform items. So. We woke Stacy up over there. We're going to take everybody shopping.
Send Stacy over, and we'll wait here.
I've had an opportunity to be out in the field with I think most of the board members at one time or another, and often we have members of the public with us. This week I was able to spend a couple days with Donnie Hunter here down at Lake Powell. But I think it's important that each of you feel like you've got some uniform apparel that lets others in the public know that you represent the Division of Wildlife here, and let them have a chance to reach out and meet you and express thoughts or concerns they have. So if we get this done early today, which I think we will, let's sneak out back and see if we can work on that. So some of our aquatics programs. This is a big day. This is the day of the year that we talk about our aquatics and fish recommendations, fishing guidebooks for the year to come. And we've talked about all the great hunting in the state, but I could tell you our fishing our fishing opportunities here in the state are really incredible right now. From Lake Powell, where if you're there at the right moment, you can literally just about have fish jumping in the boat, to Big Cutthroat and rainbows up at Strawberry and many different water bodies throughout the state. Our aquatics team has really dedicated themselves. We have some brilliant and hardworking people in that program that are trying to solve challenging problems and come up with solutions out there that give our anglers the best opportunity and want to keep them coming back. And we've been successful. We average around 450 to 480,000 folks a year in the state buying a a license, and that speaks very well to what we're producing out there. Nobody's compelled in this state to have to go buy a fishing license every year, but we've got almost 500,000 people that recognize the good work that we're doing. So I talked to Roger a little bit. I was going to highlight a few things, and I want to let you all know that Roger Wilson, our aquatics chief, has announced that he's going to retire here at the end of December, and he's had a great career. I think he's right at 37 years with us here at the Division of Wildlife. Pretty impressive career, and he's worked various places around the state, probably most famous for the good work he did up at Strawberry Reservoir. But as he and I were talking earlier about some things to update, we've got some rotenone treatments and some hatchery work and a few things. I thought it would be appropriate to have Roger come up for a moment. I hope he's still here somewhere, hiding back there, and let him brag for a moment about how things are looking in the state and his section a little bit about his career here with the Division of Wildlife. So I'll turn it over to you, Roger.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity, and I see a look from Stacy. Don't go on too long, so I will. I kind of caught that look. But,
I always have that look, Roger.
It's a very difficult thing for me to talk about retirement. I've done this for a long time. It's really part of my life for almost 40 years when you add in my seasonal time, so it's really, really difficult. But let me just say that I appreciate support we get from the anglers, from the angling groups, from the board, from the RACs, and from administration. I really appreciate everyone and everyone's interest. And let me just also say that we've got Greg alluded to this, we have a great staff. I think our statewide staff is as good or better than we've ever had. And I feel like I can leave now and leave the fisheries program in great hands. I think we have a number of very competent individuals that can function as chief. Let me just kind of talk about a few things that we're working on now that are happening. We've had a lot of treatment projects across the state the last little while. Cutthroat restoration in every region. We have some big management plans being implemented at Red Fleet. We're going to start one at Jordanelle. We had one recently complete at Fish Lake and on the Boulder, and we're also working on one for Lake Powell. These are great processes. We work with the anglers. We engage them in a discussion of what they'd like to do at these important waters, and we're going to be having a treatment at Red Fleet that will pretty much fire up our management plan there, and we expect great things out there in the future. Gunlock Reservoir will be treated next week as well. We are starting our Jordanelle management plan process next week, so great things happen on the management side. In fish culture, we're moving in a great way to warm water production. We've actually embarked on the path at Lee Cay. Lee Cay will be completed by fall of next year. We started phase 3 this fall, which is redeveloping 2 of the ponds to the south and raising those, and we will by next fall have everything done, and that will be a state-of-the-art production facility for tiger muskie. We have started a major effort at Springville on the west side. We're going to be redeveloping that for warm water production, and we're also in the process of discussing a recirculation facility, which is a contained temperature maintained facility that I think will help us down the road as well. We are going to get big time into warm water production, and I think one thing we might want to bring up too, we were funded to buy a trawler. It's a large boat we use to trawl and to do our hydroacoustics. This would be a very nice tool that we can apply to our bigger waters. We acquired that last week. It's actually up it's at the Great Salt Lake Project office now, but we're going to embark on a kind of a show me next week and kind of display that. I think we can invite board members, can we not, Paul, to that if they'd like to come?
Yeah, we just need to let Alan know so we can provide lunch on Tuesday if they want to come up.
you know, it's just a great piece of equipment. It did cost a bit of money. It was a couple $100,000 in that ballpark. So, but it will provide a great tool for us to assess our larger reservoir fisheries. So, we're pretty excited about that. I think I'll let it go at that. Is there anything else that you think I need to bring up, Drew or Paul? Okay, thank you.
Again, I'd like to congratulate Roger, and maybe we could have a hand for Roger too for all this. You know, Roger did mention, if we have one more second, did mention, you know, we're doing a lot with warm water for the trout lovers out there. Just realize, even though we're certainly committing resources to warm water fish in the state, we're still the vast majority of the dollars and resources that we put out there for our trout and cold water species. So we're trying to make a little bit of everything. So we turned 450,000 anglers hopefully into 550 or 650,000 anglers. And I think these guys have got some good strategies for that. Mr. Chairman, the last thing I have is kind of a technical issue, talking with our tech guys. Because we broadcast this in a variety of venues, they asked me to mention making sure we're talk clearly into the microphone. So when you go to speak, make sure this thing's tipped down in front of you. Personally, and secondly, they lose you when you're talking like I am now. When you kind of turn and look at your fellow members to make motions and start talking at them, we lose you on the microphone. So be cognizant of that, if you will, as you turn your head, that they can easily lose you. So a couple other folks also. I mentioned the folks here in the room, but we have some other technical people that help out in our communications team and getting these delivered out there. We've got Amy Canning, Crystal Ross, Mark Martinez, Mark Hadley. These guys all do a great job. Corey Malett, not only helping deliver this real time, but creating the messaging that comes out of this and helping our media have good understanding of what your deliberations all are and how those get out there. So really is a team effort, and I want to, again, thank our whole communications team and these guys here in the room. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Craig. Calvin, will you introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Calvin.
Central Region.
Calvin Crandall, Central Region.
And with that, I'll turn the time back over to the Chair Bear. Actually, before I do, just one thing, since we're milking this informational process right now. I just had a request from one father in Vernal to pass on to us his thankfulness for the COR program that allows special needs hunters a couple of extra days. If you could see this, and I know everybody can't see from where you are, but that's a picture of a young man holding a 2-point buck that took him 4 years to try and harvest. And he was at the point where he was discouraged enough to not continue hunting because of his needs. He's paralyzed basically in his left hand. This is an orphan from Haiti who was adopted by a family in Vernal, raised with the rest of the kids there, wanted to be a hunter, wanted to participate with the other kids, but was unable to do so in a meaningful fashion and had not been able to harvest anything until he heard about the COR program, where he could get those extra days and take the extra time, and he was able to harvest a nice buck and a nice bull this year. He turned to his father and said, "This is the best day of my life." So please pass that on to the Division of Wild. This is the young kid. Please pass that on to the Division of Wildlife Resources and thank them for their efforts. And so I thought I would pass that on before I turn the time back over to Chair Bear.
That's a great story. Thank you. I'd like to apologize for being late. There was a little bit of traffic out there today. It's good. I'd also like to thank the cop that pulled me over about 15 minutes ago for taking it easy on me. So the warning is appreciated.
Is that a public record?
Well, yeah, he let me off pretty easy. So, anyway, apparently we start these at 9. Is that right? Okay. You can add whatever you want.
I was just
Director.
looking through my list of stuff, and I apologize for taking another moment. We're also into our, and I skipped right over this one, we're also into our upland hunting season. Best chuckers availability and hunting that we've seen in many years. So get out after our various upland, our grouse, chuckers, soon pheasants species. But again, another great way. We've provided a lot of opportunity out there, so didn't want to forget that element today. Thank you.
All righty. With that, I believe we're up to our fishing guidebook and rule. So we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Drew Cushing. Take it away, Drew.
All right. Thank you, John. A bunch of new faces I'm going to have to get to know. I guess that's how you know you've been in a job a while is, everybody turns over. So before I go, before I get to going, I'd like to recognize, Roger, of course, and my partner in crime, Paul Birdsey. He's the Coldwater Sport Fish Coordinator, and then all of our regional managers and the director's office. So this is a fairly easy year this year, and that probably is why we don't have a lot of public here. It's just one of those years where we didn't have a lot of changes. There's going to be some significant changes next year that I'm going to talk about here that we included in our survey. So with that, I'll get going. So several years ago, we went away from the spring informational RAC and Wildlife Board meetings that we went to, largely because the public didn't attend them, and we weren't able to get the feedback that we needed, or we felt we needed to proceed with changes in the fall. So we initiated this online survey, which has been probably 3 or 4 years now. And so once again, we conducted this survey. It's about a 6-week survey that we put online for anybody to weigh in with their opinions on the regulation proposals that we have, and then just to provide us any additional feedback, regardless of what it is, which is kind of a double-edged sword. Some of the comments that we get when you ask them just to write in what they think are really well thought out, and some of them are not. And so you have to sift through those, and so we'll go through those. We had 1,800 people respond to the survey this year, which was a record for us. And then it also allowed us to provide information to all of our regional managers for future recommendations based on those write-in comments about what people want and feel for the future. So one of the questions we asked was about our tiger muskie management, and Roger made you guys aware that we have a construction project going on at the Lee K Center. We have struggled with manufacturing tiger muskie, which is a cross between a true muskie and a northern pike, and you breed those two together, and you come up with a sterile fish that gets even bigger than the northern pike. They get up to 50 inches here in Utah. But they're sterile, and it allows us a lot of flexibility of where to use them. It doesn't pose the threat that a fertile fish would in our native species areas. So we have gone far enough down the road where we feel confident we can supply the need for our tiger muskie program on an annual basis. So we chose this year to ask some questions to the public about their opinion on tiger muskie management in the future, just in case we need to make some changes. So we asked, number one, how many people fish for tiger muskie? And this is, just people who weigh in generally, and 41% of the anglers said they target tiger muskie every year. If you go through our other surveys, tiger muskie are fairly low on the species preference list. So people don't, if rainbow trout, as Greg alluded to earlier, are the most preferred species. But it's surprising that 41% of the anglers target tiger muskie every year, which leads you to believe that people go out and fish for different fish throughout the year. Most of the people don't keep tiger muskie. 47% of the people said they would not take a tiger muskie home regardless of what size it is, which leads us to the last question we asked, which is what size is a trophy tiger muskie to you as an angler? And as you can see there, it's evenly split between 40, 45, and 50 inches. So if you combine these two, it's kind of a, one reinforces the other. The one tells us that people don't harvest them. The next tells us that every tiger muskie, regardless of size, is sacred. And this, goes with what we see in our management waters. We see a lot of deep hook tiger muskie that people return because they don't want to take them home because they care so much about the resource, and those fish a number of them end up dead on the bank because they get hooked in the gills, and people feel that they're doing them a favor by releasing them. We're not going to make any recommendations at this point on tiger muskie, but next spring, in this same survey, we're going to follow up these questions and try and get at specific regulations that will do what our tiger muskie anglers want, but at the same time try and reduce some of this hooking mortality that we see in our management waters. The next question we asked deals with our kokanee salmon regulations. We have a number of kokanee salmon fisheries throughout Utah. Each of them have a subtly different regulation on them when it comes time for those fish to spawn. Those fish spawn, as you know, and then die, and as such, you want to protect those fish so that they have an opportunity to go up, lay their eggs, do their business, and then return those young fish back to the fishery that they came from. So each of those fisheries have some sort of protection when those fish run and spawn in the fall. What we wanted to do was ask if there was a standard regulation, a standard protection that would protect all the fisheries but simplify the language and accomplish our task at the same time. So we asked if this regulation, which just happens to be the one that's on the gorge presently, and it would be a protection to a closure to the possession of all kokanee salmon from September 10th through November 30th. And this was well supported from the public, so this is one that we're going to recommend, and it'll be later in the presentation. This next one, corn, is always in the write-in comments. It's a hot topic. People always write in, how come I can't use corn in Utah? And so we asked the question this year on this survey, if corn was legal as a bait in Utah, would you use it? 38% of the respondents said that they would use corn as bait if allowed. Now, we didn't ask, are you a bait fisherman or not? And that's probably something that we're going to follow up on, just to see, whether for bait fishermen this would be something that would be beneficial to them or they would like to use. One of the things you need to be aware of is the reason that this was illegal is it created an incentive for people to chum. This is really a heavily used bait during ice fishing season. People would bring it and it sinks down to the bottom, and so they would throw corn down the hole and then fish around that corn and increase their chances of catching fish. Chumming's illegal, and so it kind of took away the incentive for them to chum. There was also, according to our law enforcement officers, a trash issue, which in the past may have been an issue, but we just don't know how that's going to play out. So we are going to follow up, but we're not sure where this is going to go. And then the last thing, we're going to pursue a slam. There's several slams that the Division of Wildlife has right now. If you're not familiar with this kind of thing, the upland slam is one where you go out and if you take a limit of I think rabbits, chukar, pheasants, quail, so on and so forth, and you get the collection of the slam, then you get some item, a pin, or I think in the upland thing, it's the end of a shotgun shell. And as you accomplish your slam, you get a bigger item. We are going to pursue that, but we wanted to know where to start. And so what we asked is if we were going to pursue this slam, what would be your number one priority to pursue first? And as such, you can see the responses. The number one was a native cutthroat slam. We have several species or subspecies of cutthroat trout in Utah, and that would be a slam getting those 3 or 4 species. Number 2 would be a bass slam, and number 3 preference would be a pike slam. So we are going to start on this native cutthroat slam. We plan on having this implemented by January 1. All right, moving into the regulation changes that we proposed for this year. The first is the standardization of reservoir kokanee closures. Basically, all the reservoirs in some streams that that have these closures to the possession of kokanee, they're all going to be standardized to this date. So anything that is now closed to the possession of kokanee, regardless of what those dates are, it would read closed to the possession of kokanee salmon from September 10th through November 30th. And this would include Electric Lake tribs because they do have that closure to kokanee during the spawn. In the central region, so that's all of our statewide changes this year. So now moving into the regions, the central region, we have 3 brand new community fisheries coming online, Pole Canyon Pond, Bartholomew Pond, and Deer Valley Lakes. And these would fall under that same regulation that all of our community fisheries have. That's that standard 2-fish limit regardless of species. In the central region, the ladders has been a contentious issue as to, what is the ladders and what is not the ladders, because the current definition is based on water level elevation, strangely enough, and if the water goes down 5 feet, then that expands the ladders, or what's defined as the ladders is a closed area. Likewise, if the water is higher, that closed area shortens. And so we wanted a standardized definition that would stand true regardless of water elevation, so that there would be no confusion. So what this would do is it would clarify the ladders as follows, and this just be added language into what's already there. So, and it would read, and the Central Utah Project Canal, commonly known as the steps or ladders, from the fenced-in upper concrete structure, that's that fenced-in area up there where the water runs through, to the tunnel at Highway 40, and that would be closed to fishing. In the Northeast region, as you know, and or at least you older or more experienced Wildlife Board members know, illegal fish movement in Utah is a huge issue. Every year we have fish show up in new waters that pose problems to either our management or native species downstream or upstream from where they're put in. We had a catch and kill regulation on Red Fleet Reservoir. It's been in place for a couple years now. There were walleye introduced in there. We worked with the public up there, and it was a good group. We put it together. It was a several-month effort. We came up with a management plan that uses sterile walleye and some other fish species that aren't detrimental as these fertile walleye are in Red Fleet Reservoir. So we're going to treat Red Fleet Reservoir in 2 weeks. We will completely renovate that reservoir, go back in with these fish species that we worked with the public on, which is a great management plan. It also takes care of the native species concerns downstream from Red Fleet Reservoir. After we do that, we want to go back with the general statewide regulations for all species at Red Fleet Reservoir, so the catch and kill would be removed. The southern region, this is just a clarification. This is a new kokanee water in Fish Lake. Those fish are 2 years old? 1 year old. We want to put this in place because these kokanee trout this next year are probably going to reach a catchable size, and anglers are going to want to know how they fit into the regulation on Fish Lake. In this proposal, they would just be included within the 4-fish limit that's already in place there. So it would read the limit would be 4 kokanee or 4 trout or kokanee, regardless of species, and only one may be over 24 inches. Also in the southern region, Manning Meadow is a cutthroat brood lake. It's where we do our egg takes annually for restoration purposes. They have enough fish in there where they feel comfortable with allowing the anglers to take some home with them. As such, they want to put a regulation on there which would allow that, but be fairly restrictive as well. So the recommendation would be a 2 trout limit regardless of species, and then have an artificial flies or lures only regulation on there, and then a closure from January 1st through the 2nd Saturday in July. That is all. Thank you.
I have one question. Drew, I think you probably said this, but the slide that I was looking at when you were talking about the kokanee regulation, it just said the reservoirs, but it's all the tributaries too, is right? That wording
Yes.
is in the...
Yeah. Everything that has that possession of kokanee during the spawn would fall under this limit change.
Okay.
That's what we're recommending.
All right.
And
Well,
I guess as a kind of
That's where you're going to see them anyways, in the
yeah,
tributaries. So.
There are some other streams that are closed to fishing for kokanee. and those would remain closed. So it would just be the ones that have that possession on them.
No possession means
Can't take them home.
closed.
Yeah,
Right.
you can fish for them, just can't take them home.
Yeah. We have any other questions from the board?
Got a question somewhat related to that. I was reading through one, I think it was the Southern Region, a guy had commented about the mobile app that you can, is there a lot of this information on that app?
We are working through that. We're not done with that. I'm not really dialed into what the future of that app is. I'm not sure, Greg, who might be
And I
the
say
best
it's kind
one.
of an off question,
Yeah.
but it was just something that piqued my interest because he said, if you could search all the waters and certain streams are open, certain streams are closed, if that was on there so that you could carry that with you and have that information.
It's not yet.
It's
But
not yet, but
it-
it's something
yeah.
that the tech department is working on to have all these regs on the app so you could search and find out just exactly what without having to carry a big, thick book with you.
Yeah, that's a final intent. Those comments, by the way, Calvin, were awesome. He had some great ideas for where that app should be.
Yeah, as I read
Yeah.
through that would be awesome to have, so you could go to specific waters and have exactly what's open, what's closed, and what fish are and what fish aren't legal to take. So,
We will carry that forward in that group that's working on that app.
okay, great, thanks.
Can view the guidebook.
Yeah, this was his comment. Just so and correct me if I characterize this wrong, Calvin. But what he wanted was perhaps a Utah map, which you can point to a water and have the information how to get there, what the regulations are, whether the fishing is good or bad. That was part of the thing that he wanted to see on the mobile app, and that was a great idea. And I think we need.
Yeah,
to
as I read through the comments, I thought that would be fantastic. Rather than have to have the whole. Yeah, even though you can get the guidebook, if you had specific things that you could pull right up specific to that water, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we took careful note of those comments.
Good.
I've got one question. Is there anything in there as far as to protect the kokanee when they're spawning from harassment? 'Cause I know I've rode in to view this, the spawning several times, and there's kids down there in the stream chasing them up and down the stream, and they've built kind of rock structures, piled rocks up to kind of impede their progress up the stream.
Yes, and that's where we separate out the possession from the closure, because we have streams. Sheep Creek is a place where we go in and do egg takes for kokanee. There's also several in the northern region that are closed to fishing, and then there's the Strawberry Tribs is another really strong run that we go in and take eggs. Those are closed to fishing. And not closed to harassment, but closed to fishing, because you're right, if people are in the reds, even if they're just fly fishing, it does disturb those reds and impact reproduction.
Well, the only thing I've seen is just kids having fun.
Yeah,
because it's a great viewing opportunity. A lot of people do that. It's just like going to Alaska and seeing salmon spawning.
We don't have anything in place right now.
But I just wonder if that's something you might look at in the future. I know it particularly coming out of Causey Reservoir and stuff, some of those tributaries down there, there's a lot of people go up there to view them, and kids are just having a great time. They're just playing, having fun, but they don't know, so it'd be kind of an education thing. Just
That's definitely something to
let
talk to our
people know
managers
not
about.
to bother them. Just
Kind of flattered that he's referring to me and Kurt as kids, So.
Yeah.
Was kind of fun.
Yeah, it was. So, is there any kind of signs or anything like that we can put up places like that, maybe warning people, or is it
Yeah, if you're going to
or is it that big of a concern, or?
Biologically, probably not. But there are some social things. Our kokanee fisheries are not impacted by that currently anywhere that we've identified. We do have closures to fishing, which seems to take care of most of that. But it's a good idea. Signage would be a good idea.
That's the first time I've ever heard of fish harassment. That's a good point, babe.
I've seen fish harassment.
Yeah.
Just haven't heard it brought up at the board meeting.
We have any other questions from the board? Donnie, no questions? Big talker like you usually has something to say. But
I am a big talker. I'd like to thank Roger and his team for world-class fishing in southern Utah. You've done a very good job, and we appreciate it. And we're happy with what's going on. Thank you.
You want to talk about our trip?
Well, we had a little fishing trip down on Lake Powell we had a great time. beautiful, beautiful morning. And you know, on the way down, I thought, you know what? I'm a good fisherman. I generally catch a lot of fish. And I thought, you know,
See where this is going.
Greg and
Get invited.
I probably shouldn't catch more fish than those guys. So I eased off a little bit. But maybe a little bit too much. But anyway, we had a great time. It was fun, and we got to see a lot of fish caught. We also got to see the mussel and the problems that we're having there, and it was very alarming to hear what is going to happen if those mussels get out of that lake and into our other lakes. So we need to do all we can to protect our other lakes, because it'll affect all of us really, really, really bad. So
So what I'm
Help us
gathering
out.
is there was a fishing trip and the chairman and the vice chairman were left out. Now I'm kind of sorry I asked you to talk, Donnie. Do we have any questions from the rack chairs?
John, I've got one more comment too. Just
Time's up, Byron.
I kind
Any
of want to add to
questions?
what Donnie said. I'd like to congratulate the fisheries people, especially Roger. I was able to spend 3 days with him over there in Colorado with the tri-state meeting and stuff like that. And it was great to see the respect that Utah has, and Roger specifically, from Wyoming and Colorado as to what's going on in Utah with our fisheries and stuff like that, the cutthroat restoration and everything and stuff like that. It was very enlightening for me to see that and see the communication collaboration between the three states. So you guys got a big job ahead of you to fill his shoes and stuff like that, but you guys have been in the trenches doing it for years, and like Greg said, we're in a great position right now, and just continue on and continue to improve and keep Utah as great as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like to fit in, I should say something nice about Roger, but I think it's all been said. Good job. Good job. Any questions from the rack chairs? Questions from the audience on the presentation? Mr. Tracy, please state your name for the record, sir.
Lee Tracy, United Wildlife Cooperative. I have a son who is losing his eyesight, and he's going currently to a school for the visually impaired and the blind and stuff like that. He told me about a month ago that you guys went to that school and issued some lifetime fishing licenses free of charge. And I was surprised and very, very thankful that you did that. But I'm asking a question about whether those lifetime fishing licenses are available to the general public. Is there such a program?
The Utah, there was a law passed. So Utah code says those who've got a certain specified disabilities in the state are entitled to a free disabled fishing license. We don't sell those. At one point in time, we were compensated by the legislature. So when they passed that law, they said, you tell us how many of these people there are each year, and we'll basically buy their license for them, and they would give us that money. When budgets got tight a number of years ago, the requirement has maintained, and I think it's been good for some of the disabled folks, but they did kind of scale back on compensating us for those licenses. So we do still issue those. They're not necessarily a quote lifetime license the way most of the people in this room think of that, but they're a license that we do issue if they can show a permanent disability. So no, we don't sell those to regular anglers in the state, but we did a year ago, just over a year ago, change it so instead of having to just buy a single year license year after year, that you can pick the number of years you want that license to be valid for, up to 5 years. So hopefully we're getting more people to start taking advantage of that who'll buy it for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. And that'll lock in some price stability. In fact, it gives you a little bit of a price discount if you'll buy multiple years of a license. So that's where we're at on that. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you. another question I have is recently you've issued a recommendation that on some waters that the people take their fish home, take their limits home. Is there any regulation or any possible regulation that would allow you to increase the limit on some of those so that those who do take some home will? I mean, it seems like an incentive to
You talking like
reduce
an increased possession
some
limit?
of those stunted fish waters.
You mean like an increased possession limit or a waiver on
Yeah,
the possession
something like
limit
that.
or something?
Just so you know, the limits on those waters are mostly in place as they're needed. And so the stunted fish, those fisheries that you're talking about generally have a pretty liberal limit on them already. And it is something to talk to our managers about to make sure they're diligent in, responding to those stunted situations.
Okay, thanks.
Well, apparently some of us up here just pull up and the fish jump in our boat, so maybe we need to see if we can. Do we have any other questions? Guess we're up to the reports from the RAC chairman. Let's start in the southern region where we have Mr. Bunnell filling in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the southern region, there was some discussion, as was brought up a moment ago, about some of the different ways that the app could be used. It was really a good discussion. One of the ideas that was presented was a way to have notifications. You know how a lot of the apps that you buy, they'll call them push notifications, where they'll send you, whether it's scores on a football game or whatever, that when we put emergency closures or emergency regulation changes in place, that those are automatically sent as a notification to everybody that has that app. And so that I thought, and when we have regulation changes and we're lifting limits on lakes, that'd be the kind of information that would be great to get out very quickly to people. And so I thought it was a good discussion. And I think, as Drew said, there'll be some things that come out of that in the future. But relative to the after we had that discussion, our RAC passed a motion to accept the regulations as presented, but to look into possible regulation changes that would suspend or increase limits late in the season on lakes that are likely to winter kill, to take advantage of a resource that may be only there for a limited amount of time. I don't know that there was a expectation that would might happen this year because there's some things that may need to be done, but to look into in the future if there's a way to implement that sort of a regulation.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
Would that be different than, say, the director having the authorization to do something that he needed to?
Well, I think
do that by executive order, right? Can stop
the
hunting
director
seasons
can do that, but we haven't usually used that in areas where it's a winter kill situation. We use it in where on lakes where we don't have a conservation pool and we know we're going to lose the fish because the lake's being drawn down or there's something else going on. I think what was envisioned here was something along the lines of, after October 15th or November 1st or whatever the date was, the lakes in the Uintas above a certain elevation, the limit would be increased, or something along those lines that was in place for every year for high elevation lakes that are likely that winter kill on most years.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. Mr. Southeast.
The southeastern region passed the division's recommendations unanimously.
Central.
One of the questions that came up on this is on that survey that was taken. This particular RAC member was concerned about whether a lot of retired people that don't have computers were able to comment on that survey, and that was really the only concern that was time. And the RAC, our RAC, voted 11 one abstention. So it was,
You had an abstention on the fishing?
yeah, he said he was on a committee that was.
Okay. All righty. Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the Northeastern RAC, there weren't really any issues that came up on this one, and they voted to pass it, the recommendations as presented by the division, and it was unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Same as for the northern region. Motion was made and passed to accept the guidebook and rule as presented unanimously.
Unanimously? But we like unanimous with one abstention. All righty. Guess we're up to the comment period. If you haven't filled out a comment card and would like to address the board, do that now. I only have 2. So we'll go first. We'll give you 3 minutes. If you need more time than that, where there's only 2 of it, I guess you can plead your case. But we'll start with Mr. Ken Strong. After that, Mr. Lee Tracy, and that's all the comment cards I have. In fact, because you're both such nice guys, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Ken Strong with Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife. If you're wondering about the abstention, that was me, and that was because I worked a little bit with Paul and Drew over some of the plans that they had and felt it best not to cause any conflicts. On behalf of Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife, we want to thank all you people for the great job that you do and for the time you put in for the future wildlife and fishing in this state. And at this time, we'd like to thank Roger Wilson for the time that he's put in. I've been able to work with him, and he's a great guy, and we've had some good conversations, and we wish him the best of luck in the future. We'd also like to thank Director Sheehan for the trawler that arrived last week into the state. It's a great additive to the fishing, and will make great. It will help quite a bit in improving the fishing and helping the biologists understand what's going on in the reservoirs. And I'd like to thank the division, especially Roger Wilson, Paul Birdsey, and Drew Cushing for taking time to work with Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife on these fishing issues. They're great people to work with. And so on behalf of Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, we would like to say that we support the plan that the division has put forth. We think it's a very worthy plan and that it will help in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. Mr. Tracy.
I'm not going to take probably more than even 1 minute.
I was going to say, I'll give you 10 if you want. This is only one time.
Lee Tracy, United Wildlife Cooperative. I'd just like to echo Mr. Strong's statements. United Wildlife Cooperative is very appreciative of the work that's been done in the fishery section. And you addressed our 2 concerns, so we appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. Do we have any other comments? That's all I have. Guess we'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion and entertain a motion.
I had one comment, and you may want to come back up and address this on the corn. I think there was a comment that somebody had made in the central region about fishing for carp on Utah Lake, and said that corn was excellent bait for that. Is that a legal bait to use on carp on Utah Lake, or that corn in general is illegal to use?
Yeah, corn is illegal to use. And just so you know, there's 2 species of fish that I know of that corn is spectacular, and one is carp and the other is kokanee. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to work through this a little bit deeper this next spring and figure out, just how important it is to folks.
I'm going to say, I know doing a lot to get rid of as many carp as they can on Utah Lake. Is that something that you could put in, that we will allow corn for carp fishing only on Utah Lake? Because I don't think there's kokanee in the lake.
It's something to follow up on.
Something to think about.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
All
Like I said, we're going to get deeper into that question this next spring.
Okay.
The thing is would I use corn? Probably not. But I'm not those guys, and so
Right.
we need to figure out just how big of a
How big of an issue is it?
Yeah.
Would it help the problem of carp in Utah Lake if they would use corn?
Right.
And I guess, like you say, if you're looking at that and working through it, then
yeah, we will.
Okay.
One of the things that and I said I wouldn't use it, but anything that would catch me another fish when I'm out fishing, it's hard to hard to argue against that.
What Calvin is saying is he's got a barn full of corn, and he wants to know how much to charge for it.
Let's go.
by the kernel. You start charging corn by the kernel. That's a pretty lucrative deal.
Colonel did chicken.
Gotta grow the right kind.
I have a question before you go, Drew.
Yeah.
If it's okay to ask it. What's the division's feeling about what was proposed down in the southern region about allowing take of fish that were going to winter kill?
Yeah, great question, Mike. One is hopefully those waters are being managed and stocked so that there's not a lot of fish that are left over when we know a water winter kills 4 out of 5 years. We try and we know those waters. Our regional folks are really good at identifying them and managing around those issues. But we were talking about it just now. We talked about the Southern Rack. It is something that we need to look into. Seasonal limits aren't foreign. I mean, we have seasonal limits on a number of our fish. We have closures, and this is definitely something that we're going to consider.
So we're flexible enough in the management that we can adjust takes as needed without having to do anything new. Is that what you're saying? Or is that something?
One is a lot of these waters are managed so that the fish run out when winter comes anyway.
Right.
And so hopefully we're doing a good enough job where we don't waste a lot of fish, and I'm confident that we are in most of the cases. However, it is something to consider. You could have a regulation on a specific water that says, it's going to have a 4-fish limit until September 1st and then an 8-fish limit thereafter. That's definitely possible.
Okay, thanks. Would the division consider those kind of things as you come back to us next year? I don't think today's the day to decide that. You've got time that you need to work on those and study those. But is that something that would come back, say, a year from now, if you've had thought about that, and give us your thoughts about that?
It's definitely something we can. I hate to put it on an action item thing, but it is definitely something that we can bring back next year and let you know how we're managing and kind of whether there are waters that we could identify that might fit this, and probably bring some forward if there are, for sure.
I just personally, I think that's a good idea if there are opportunities to take those fish that are going to die anyway. I hear from lots of folks that are used to be avid anglers and they were fishing primarily to go out and have some fun, but to catch some fish and take it home and cook it up. And when you go someplace and you can catch 2 fish and go home with 2 fish, that's not much incentive anymore. So if there's opportunities to maybe increase the chances for people taking home a few fish, I think that would be good.
So we don't need to put that on the action log. Is that something you're kind of looking at doing anyway? That's in the works, or?
Well, Richard's right here, and we talked about it at the RAC meeting and talked about it today again. I don't think we're going to let it slip.
Okay.
So.
Good deal. Any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, I think we might be to the point where we could entertain a motion. The only thing I have that kind of what Mike talked about maybe was, if there's some way to address water where we think we might get winter kill or something like that. Other than that, I think we're pretty unanimous. I don't think so. He said he thinks they're on it. So other than that, I was pretty unanimous across the board. So
I'll make a motion that we approve the division's recommendation on the fishing regulations and guidebook as presented.
We have a second. It's been moved by Mike King and seconded by Dr. Woodward that we approve the division's fishing guidebook and rule as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? Passes unanimous. Thank you very much, Drew. I've had quite a bit of discussion with the Bass Club down at UVU, and they are ecstatic, to say the least, to see the movement towards some warm water fisheries, and they're a happy bunch down there. So if you ever need any service work or anything, lean on them a little bit. Lean on them a little bit. We're now up to item number 6 on our agenda, hunting technologies discussion, and that's going to be by Rick Olson. Rick, it's Captain, right?
That would be correct.
Captain Olson.
As he's getting that ready, maybe a quick comment or two on the app. We developed that app, rolled out about a year ago, and we've added more than 50,000 new downloads this year, so it's being used. Still happy to say, proud to say, it's the only app of any state in the United States that allows you to download your licenses on it and have those available for use for reminders, for law enforcement purposes and others. So we're still the leading edge of that, and I think we're starting to become victims of our own success because people are seeing the many possibilities that an app like that on a phone can bring. So I expect we'll continue to stay in the lead, and there are lots of things we'd like to integrate into that, and hopefully we can make some of those happen. At some point, if you put too much stuff in there, it becomes a bit clunky. So we'll sort through and try to get the most important things on there we can. But if anyone here is a licensed hunter and angler, and I suspect most of the folks in the room are, please get that on your phone, and more to come as we get more success on that. So thank you.
I use mine all the time. All the time. Captain, take it away, sir.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get started on this presentation, I just want to make a comment on a discussion earlier. I noticed that you waited until Drew said the rule didn't prohibit getting in a stream and chasing kokanee before you said you had done it. Drew was correct. The rule doesn't address it. The bad news is it does.
It was 10 years ago. Does that make a difference?
Statute on that? Statute of limitations is run out?
No, but I'm sure we can visit later and handle it in the same manner our allied agency handled your traffic issue earlier.
I did not know it was illegal to snare panda bears, all right?
Okay, thank you. This is a pretty interesting topic we're going to talk about today. It is informational only. It's had a lot of discussion on forums, and we'll get right into it. The purpose of this informational presentation is to take a look at some surrounding Western states regulations, to look at some technology, and most importantly, to present a pretty major survey, present the results of that survey. Okay, this will be informational only. There is no proposal on the table at this time, so there will be no vote. All of these issues we're going to talk about today are social issues. They're not biological in nature. But if you really look at most of the issues that come before this board are social issues. And during this discussion, try not to get social issues confused with ethical issues. They're not synonymous. There are a lot of groups out there that, or some groups out there that think all sport hunting is unethical. So try to distinguish between the two. This has come about because every year we get a lot of questions. The division does from the public, some from the legislature and the RAC and boards. We have not looked at this issue for 10 to 15 years. And one thing I want to point out is it's very difficult when you start compare different states' regulations because of different hunt structures. You're not always comparing apples to apples, but I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention before I get into some of the survey stuff. Other than right now, I will not use the word primitive in this discussion. Society's definition of primitive can change over time. I don't know, this isn't related to weapons in any way, but over the weekend, there was a story came out on social media. Somebody took a picture of Karl Malone at a LSU football game holding a flip phone. Okay, social media, Twitter, which I don't tweet, I want to make that known, went crazy. And one of the tweets that I read was how primitive for Karl to use a flip phone in 2015. So we have society out there that thinks a flip phone is primitive. And it probably is if you compare it to this little thing in my pocket. Okay? But in my mind, this dates me a little, but a primitive phone is my first cell phone, which was a brick phone. It was like a brick. You couldn't do anything with the phone but call people. So it's interesting when you think about the word primitive. Okay, as part of this, probably the major part of us undertaking this project to look at weapon types, we sent out a survey, the division did, to 77,000 ear and elk hunters from last year that were at least 18 years or older. This was an online email invitation. You couldn't just go to the website and take it. Had we done that, we probably would have received twice the number of responses. The survey was open from the 27th of July to August 16th. Each question had 3 options to the question: a yes, a no, or a no opinion. You'll see in a minute, people have an opinion on this. Okay, we had over 19,000 responses to this survey. Now this is significant because this is the most respondents the division has ever had on any survey they've ever sent out. The public, the hunting public, are very interested on these issues. Okay, one of the questions we ask in the survey is, what weapon type do you hunt big game with most often? The results. Now, when we went into this, we thought we would have to present the results based on weapon type, meaning archery hunters would think one way, rifle hunters would answer the questions a different way, and muzzleloaders a third way. In the end, that was not the case. There is very, very little, 1 to 2% difference in the answers based on what weapon type they hunt with most often. So I'm going to present the results all together because it doesn't make a difference if you break it out by weapon type. Okay, the first thing we looked at was draw locks on a bow during an archery season. Now, a draw lock, most of you probably know this, but a draw lock is a device that holds a bow at full draw. So you can hold a vertical bow with one hand and it's still drawn. You just release a trigger or a release on it, the bar or rod drops out of the way and the bow fires. It effectively turns your vertical bow into a crossbow, a vertical crossbow. Okay, when we looked at other states, 3 states allow the use of a draw lock on an archery hunt. 10 do not, 3 are silent on it. Okay, here's where the problem comes in when you make comparisons. Depending on how the law is written, if the law is silent on it, you can use that. In other states, if they're silent, you cannot use that. Okay, in Utah, for an archery hunt, you cannot use a draw lock currently unless you have a COR for a disabled person. Now, you can use a bow with a draw lock on any legal weapon hunt. We asked our hunters what they thought. Should draw locks be allowed on bows during an archery season? 69% said no. You'll see these ratios throughout this presentation. The hunting public is pretty opinionated on these issues. There's not a lot of 50-50s. Okay, we also looked at magnifying scopes on bows. 7 states do not allow that. 8, the majority are silent on it. Utah is a no currently. We ask our hunters, what do you think? Should magnifying scopes that are attached to the bow be allowed during the archery hunt? 70% said no. Now we ask a question, should rangefinders that are attached to bows be allowed during an archery hunt? Now it flips. 60% say yes, that should be allowed. They want the ability to put a rangefinder attached to a bow. Now I think when you talk to people out in the field, this makes sense, because it was always hard to explain to a hunter why they could have a handheld rangefinder and they could go like this and that was fine, but they couldn't go like this. But our hunters want that. That would be a change if we were to allow this. Okay, crossbows. This was a hot item last year. This is a map. The states in green allow crossbows during an archery hunt. The states in blue do not allow. Utah does not, unless again you have a COR. So a disabled person or somebody who cannot pull back a bow could get a COR to use a crossbow during an archery hunt. Anybody can use a crossbow during any legal weapon hunt. Okay, if you look at this map here, primarily the states that allow crossbows during an archery hunt are whitetail states. Crossbows are not an easy weapon to use. They're heavy, they're cumbersome. Most whitetail hunting, especially the farther east you go, are done out of ground blinds or tree stands, where they're not packing a big, heavy crossbow through the brush. I think that's why they're so popular back there and why they're not popular out west. We ask our hunters, what do you think? Should crossbows be allowed during a general season archery deer hunt? 60% said no. What about an elk hunt? Again, 60% no. What about a limited entry hunt for deer, elk, or pronghorn? 56% said no. We ask one other question. If crossbows were to be allowed during an archery hunt, should you be allowed to put a magnified scope on it? 69% said no. This creates somewhat of a problem, because the vast majority of the crossbows on the market right now come with a magnified scope almost built into the bow. They can be taken off, but it's not as easy as taking off some scope rings and pulling off a scope. Okay, muzzleloaders.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? As you look at these survey results, you mentioned this at some of the racks, and I didn't hear you mention it today. One of the first slides talked about what's your weapon of choice that you most commonly hunt with. As our data gurus look through the data, the responses on these questions, correct me if I'm wrong, looked pretty similar throughout, regardless of what your weapon of preference was. So some folks may say, well, the gun guys are forcing their opinions on archery hunters and all. And is that correct, that these results wouldn't look much different if we just saw all of the results for archery people, all of them for muzzleloader, and all of rifle people? So that's why they're okay. So
Yeah.
sorry
So
I missed
it
that, but
didn't
I think
matter.
that's important
If
because
you
some
look at
folks
each
are worried about
individual
that.
weapon type, I mean, there's just a 1 or 2% difference, and archery hunters actually were higher than what was the 60% do not of our hunters don't want a crossbow allowed on a deer hunt. Archery hunters answered that question at about 62% no. So there was no difference. Okay, muzzleloaders. States in green allow a magnified scope on a muzzleloader during a muzzleloader hunt. 10 states do not. Again, Utah is a no, unless you have a COR. If your eyesight is bad enough, you can qualify for a COR to put a magnified scope on your muzzleloader and use it during a muzzleloader hunt. Now, again, on any legal weapon hunt, you can have any power scope on your muzzleloader that you want. Okay, what did our hunters think? 57% of our hunters want the ability to put a magnified scope on their muzzleloader during a muzzleloader hunt. Okay, rifles. We looked at the minimum caliber what states, if states have a minimum caliber of a rifle for the use of big game hunting. 7 states have no minimum caliber. 4 states require 22 or larger. 5 states, 24 or larger. Utah, we're simpler than that. It's just a center fire with an expanding bullet. Okay, now we did not ask a question on our survey about minimum calibers because we never get the question, what's the smallest gun I can use to kill a deer? We didn't ask that question. What we do get a lot of questions about, what's the largest caliber that I can use to kill a big game animal? And this has really exploded the last few years with the 50 cal BMG round. Only 2 states limit a maximum or have a limit on maximum caliber on rifles. North Dakota has a max caliber of .49, so it outlaws that 50. Idaho attempts to do this a little bit different. They limit the weight of the gun to 16 pounds. You can have any caliber you want as long as it weighs less than 16 pounds. If it's over 16 pounds, it would be illegal in Idaho. We ask our hunters, because this is a question we get asked a lot, should 50 caliber rounds be legal for hunting big game? Currently they are. We don't limit. They are legal in Utah right now. According to our survey, our hunters want 50 cal or larger outlawed. Now, if you talk to people more in depth, I think we may have missed the boat with this question a little bit. I don't think our hunters are opposed to using a very large caliber. What they don't agree with is long-range distant shooting, and they equate 50 cals to long-range shooting. I mean, 1,000, 1,500, 1,600 yards. In reality, if you talk to long-range shooters, they don't use 50 cal guns for long-range shooting. Most of those guns are 30 caliber or sometimes even smaller. So I'm not so sure that the hunters, even though this question, they're opposed to large calibers, I think what they're really opposed to is long-range shooting in a hunting environment.
The other thing that potentially does is limits a very few people who use a muzzleloader on an any weapon hunt, and they're shooting a 50 caliber muzzleloader.
Well, we could, right now, I mean, there is no large caliber, but if we were to propose, and I emphasize if, we were to propose a maximum limit, a limit on the maximum caliber, we would make sure that meant center fire rounds only. Okay. We ask our hunters, do you want the ability to use a rifle-mounted range-finding scope? Currently, these are legal to use in Utah now. Our hunters want that to remain legal. Now, these are range-finding scopes that do not cast a visible beam of light. It's illegal to use any device that casts a visible beam of light, which is a good thing. You get a little nervous when you look down and see this little red dot bouncing on you. Okay, new technology, smart guns. Have you guys, does the board members know what a smart gun is? It's not a gun necessarily that just it's smart because John's holding it. Okay, these smart guns, if you want to see some incredible video of weaponry, go to trackingpoint.com. These guns are amazing. How they work, they're computer aided in their aiming. You look through the scope. At some point, you have to get the crosshairs or the little dot on your target. At that point, you push a button. It's called tagging your target. Once you've tagged the target, you put your finger on the trigger and you pull back, but the gun will not fire until the computer says it's going to hit the target. You don't miss.
Is this what you used to fish with, Donnie?
Now, I've even seen latest, I just did this a couple weeks ago, and they have a new pair of goggles out that go with this, where the hunter actually was aiming like this. He was looking over this way and could see the target in his goggles, hit the target without even looking at it. Okay, they're pretty incredible weapons. Are they appropriate to use in a hunting situation? Our hunters say no. 84% of our hunters want smart guns outlawed. Now, 84% in a survey is incredible. You can't get 84% of the public to agree the sky is blue.
I like the idea for ISIS or something like that, but not so much for hunting, so I can...
Military and law enforcement use, I can see some applicability, but...
You guys have one of these? Because that's going to change my whole outlook on what I'm doing this weekend if you do.
I'm not going to admit to anything. Okay. I've added 2 new weapons here. We just became aware of 2 weapons, one of which is on the market. One is not yet, but will be in the spring of 2016. We just found out about these the other day, so these 2 slides and this discussion was not taken through the rack system. But there is a gun on the market right now that's a .357 caliber air gun. It can shoot at 800 feet per second. There's videos of people killing African big game animals with these air guns. They're not Daisy Red Riders anymore.
Not just going to shoot your eye out, is that what you're saying?
Okay, we don't know that much about these weapons. I think before these would be illegal to use for big game in Utah right now. I think we need to take a look at these weapons before we even have a discussion about, you know, should we allow them, shouldn't we allow them? We need a little more information on these, especially this next one. Now we have an air gun that shoots a arrow. Okay, 450 feet per second. That's faster than most crossbows or vertical bows.
Where can you buy this?
You can't buy it yet.
That is freaking awesome.
But I actually have asked.
Being adjourned.
I actually think that this could have some applicability for our technicians or biologists or officers to take deer in urban environments. So we may try getting one of these and see how effective they are. Greg, I think from discussions I've heard today, we probably should deputize these guys so they don't get in trouble.
You know, I've seen both of these weapons, these last two in person, these air guns, and they're very effective. This airbow gun you just saw will shoot 2-inch groups at 50 yards with those arrows. They're very effective. And the air gun before that, I've seen multiple videos of deer being shot in fields with that 357 gun, and those deer dropping just as though they'd been shot with a 270 or something else. So the reason that we've added this wasn't even in the racks, but at some point we will have a public saying, why can't we use these things? They're highly effective and very lethal. So I don't know. Yeah, that's why I think Captain Olson said, we don't know what primitive it is anymore. I don't even know if we hardly know what a weapon is anymore when you look at some of this stuff. But
well, let's face the facts. When the zombies come, and they're coming. I was out in Vernal the other day, folks. They're coming. All right? We're going to need some of this stuff, so you need to look into this. Now the Vernal people are mad. Relax.
I am.
Yeah. I learned pretty early in my career, they're different in the basin. Okay. In summary, according to our survey, our hunters do not support the use of crossbows during a general archery hunt. They do support putting rangefinders on a vertical bow. They support magnified scopes on muzzleloaders, and they do not support large calibers, and they say hell no to smart guns.
Even in the basin.
Even in the basin. Although
smart has a little different meaning in some places, though, Doctor.
Got to admit, one of the RAC members in the Northeast region said, I'm all for efficiency, and the faster you can kill something, I'm kind of for that. But this is a little over the top. Okay, so we've heard what 19,000 members of our hunting public think. What we need now is to hear what the board thinks about this, or any guidance you may have or recommended rule changes in another month.
Well, I guess being a regular chairman still, where this is an information item, do we, Stacy? No motions? Public comment? Okay. I would be interested to know, well, I guess I'll ask the board, do we have any questions for the captain from the board? We'll keep it to questions.
I got a question. So a crossbow is legal on any weapon.
Correct.
But it has to be an any weapon hunt. It can't be the rifle hunt.
That isn't the any. That is the any weapon hunt.
That's our new terminology. I mean, I'd prefer to call it the rifle hunt because.
Okay, so you can use a crossbow on the rifle hunt.
Correct.
You can use a muzzle loader with a scope on the rifle hunt.
Correct.
With any scope.
With any scope. Okay, but you can't use a scope on the muzzle loader hunt on your muzzle loader.
It has to be currently a 1-power scope.
A 1 power.
Here's the problem.
Which is basically just a crosshair.
No, it basically makes it smaller.
Most people
worse,
that look
yes.
through a 1-power scope, including me, think the target actually looks smaller with 1 power.
Yeah,
it's
According to the regulations,
the
we have
regulations
right now,
are that's what it is.
Correct.
Okay.
That was all I had.
Byron, you got?
Well, just a question. You're going to take this back out in the next round of racks with the results?
Well, we'll come up with, if the board would like it to, we'll come up with some recommendations.
I think we're going to come up with maybe some ideas that we'd like to see you take out. I know I have a couple. So if we have any other questions from the board?
Are we going to have comments or?
Yeah, we're going to.
Let me give a little more background too. At the beginning of this, Rick mentioned that there's been concern or questions by public, legislators, and others. Actually, the fact was what really prompted this is we had a bill in the Utah legislature about 7 months ago that would mandate the legality of crossbows during archery hunts. Senator Jenkins from the Ogden area was running that bill. I testified in the legislature that we didn't believe that was the best place to be working through these sorts of ideas and discussions. At that point, the then chairman, Jake Albrecht, and I met with Senator Jenkins and agreed that if he would drop the bill, which was moving through the legislature, we would bring this back, create an action item, which the board did in March of this year, to address these sorts of topics and to bring some clarity. So this isn't purely a random occurrence. This is an action item to have this, and we've had other legislators asking us about muzzleloaders and scopes on muzzleloaders. So we felt it was good to take a whole swath of technology since it has been so long. But this is largely in response to you as a board directing us to do this, and we'll have to sift through after today what we may want to recommend. We have no guidance telling us what we need to bring to you in a month. We may remain silent on some of these. We may follow the survey's lead on some of these. I honestly don't know. I think after today we'll regroup and decide what we may want to recommend. So.
I'd like to know from the rack chairs if they have any profound info that came out of their rack meetings where it's an informational item, what the discussion was, and if there was anything that they think it added to the discussion.
I don't know if it's profound, but
scoot your mic up just a little bit if you would there, Richard.
Some of the discussion that ended up in our rack was, as we make weapons more efficient, okay, is the take of animals going to increase? And if the take of the animals is going to increase, what's going to happen to tag numbers? An opportunity. So we talked about what kind of a balance needs to be taken into account. You know, I mean, there's wounding rates, there's all kinds of things that have to be taken into consideration concerning, you know, how many tags you put out there. It's just not based on the number of animals now. It's on the percentage of take, and then the animals that are wounded. Obviously some of these weapons can become more efficient, and you're not going to have higher wounding rates and, you know, losing animals that aren't then, you know, harvested or taken home. So that was some of the discussion that we had, and I think that's kind of important. I mean, the bows that are being used now are pretty efficient compared to when I started using an old recurve, and so that was I thought that was a really good point that was brought up in our rack about the efficiency and Now, if you're going to take more animals, you got to issue fewer tags. You know, so.
Thank you. Did one of you guys over here have?
Our RAC had quite a bit of discussion about this. They're pretty passionate about it. They're pretty old school. They don't like any additional tools. They don't like scopes on muzzleloaders. They didn't like the draw lock. They don't want anything bigger than 50 caliber on the rifles. Of course, they are absolutely against smart guns and things like that. So, pretty old school in southeastern Utah.
What we found out in the southern region is if they don't get a vote, they become wallflowers and they don't talk. So we went down the line and asked specifically each RAC member to comment. And the reason that they didn't have a lot to say is they largely agreed with the results of the survey. In the areas where the survey came back and said, yeah, this is okay, the RAC members largely agreed with that as well in terms of range finding scopes and range finders mounted to bows. The one place where there was a little bit of where you had people's opinions on both sides was magnified scopes on muzzleloaders, and we had people on the RAC that had opinions on both sides of that.
Can I make a comment?
I was just going to ask if there was if the other two, John or Andy, do you guys have anything to add to the?
As far as the northeastern region, the only thing they were unanimous on was the smart gun issue. Or the other, all the other ones, there's somebody in opposition and favor of on all of them.
We had several comments regarding the impact that any of these changes would have on harvest as well. And then, again, concern over the use of any additional powered scopes on muzzleloader was raised as well.
Okay. Dr. King.
My only comment was going to be that these RAC meetings were the fisheries meetings. And I don't know how it was in the other places, but in the southeast region, there were 2 from the general public.
Pretty poorly attended.
Me and someone at Bryce back there. So, you know, the RACs made great comments. The folks down there in the southeast region had a really good discussion about it, but that's what it was because it was me by the time that happened.
Time it got to that.
So
okay.
That may have been the same in other places too. I don't know.
John?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just make one comment also. I had a lot of people talk to me about magnification on muzzleloaders, and they don't want to see it. They want to see more opportunity with not as much harvest, and they don't feel like scopes is anything they want to get into right now.
Do we have any burning questions from the public? I have one comment card, so Lee, I'm going to let you ask your question, and then I'll let you make your comment because you're the only card I got. So,
okay, basically, my questions will be regarding the comments. So, you know,
take it away.
I'll probably get the answers just by asking the questions. I happened to take the survey, and unfortunately, you know, this old man thinks about things, double thinks himself, wonders if maybe I answered the questions right. And there are a couple of things that I would have put on there had I thought about them at the time. Number one, the current regulation on the crossbows requires a permanent disability. About 2 months ago, I tried to lift a heavy battery out of my truck and tore my shoulder. I have 2 archery tags. Now what do? It was only a temporary injury, but in my case, I happened to, you know, recover enough that I could turn my bow down to 40 pounds, 40 1/4, by the way, to make it legal and stuff like that. And so I was able to use my bow, but I still haven't gotten my elk, and I'm just not really sure, you know, if 40 pounds is enough for an elk, but, you know, we'll have to see. The other thing is that I assisted some archery hunters, antelope archery hunters, and one of them also had an injury. He turned his tag in, so he was not able to hunt. Is there a possibility of changing that rule to include temporary injuries as well as permanent? Right now, it's just permanent injuries. If you have a permanent injury, you can use a crossbow during the archery season. But if you have a temporary injury, you're out of luck.
Who's the one to answer that question? Is that a legal issue, Marty, or Kenny, or who are we leaning on here?
Marty Bushman, Utah Attorney General's office. When we set this rule up in the allowance to use a crossbow during an archery hunt, was looking at qualified disabilities as might be recognized by the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that's a permanent type disability. The problem you get when you start looking at short-term injuries or illnesses or things like that is what kind of accommodations do we have to provide for somebody who gets ill and can't participate in the hunt, or sprains an ankle and can't participate in the hunt, and are we to want to operate at that level of trying to guarantee an opportunity for day-to-day injuries that might occur, illnesses or other inconveniences that take somebody out of a hunt? That's very much a policy decision, but that's kind of where we've been in the past with it.
Okay.
Can I weigh in on that for just a minute as a physician?
Please.
That would be very difficult because of the amount of injuries, whether it's a sprained ankle or a broken finger or torn rotator cuff. It would be very difficult to determine from the physician standpoint a disability and say that it's going to be 2 months or 3 months prior to that person being able to pull a bow back. I think it would open a can of worms that would make it very difficult to determine the disability to qualify them in any meaningful way. And so we would have a wide variety across the state from different physicians. Currently, a physician has to qualify that person based on ADA or other criteria that they're disabled. There are a lot of people who have just broken a bone that are going to be disabled for a certain amount of time. But a injured shoulder, it would be very difficult to know how long it's going to be for him before he could draw a bow.
Means you bring that up. It seems like I remember sitting through this meeting when we had that discussion, and that was the reason it got settled the way it did, is because it was trying to take away so much of the gray area, that if it was a permanent condition, that was something that about everybody could agree on, but otherwise it left it up to, I sprained my elbow, or, and it was really tough to determine. And then, what criteria to use to measure by. So I think that's I believe that's why it got.
One thing too.
Yes, sir.
Is a few years back, we had a variance program that was very expansive in terms of allowing people season extensions if they were injured. And it got so wildly popular. I mean, we were literally looking at hundreds of people a year. We were extending seasons.
Thousands.
So many permits were getting extended to next seasons. Became very difficult to try to then evaluate impacts from hunting and things like that. And so the board at that point decided they were going to rein back in the variance program and keep it very narrow. And there's only a few permits that you can actually get a season extension on, primarily once-in-a-lifetime permits. If you're injured, ill, or an immediate family member has an injury or illness. But for the rest of the individuals, any kind of general season permits, most of your limited entry permits, your only option is to surrender your permit and get your bonus points back or preference points back and waiting periods removed.
Yeah.
That was kind of where the board went with that. And this is probably most closely associated.
Yeah.
This particular incident here with the variance program.
Thank you, Marty. Does that answer your questions, Lee? Does that kind of give you some clarity on why it is the way it is?
Yes, in my case, I was able to deal with it. And the case of one of the gentlemen I had, he turned his tag in and lost this opportunity. But I guess, you know, there are some considerations, and I realize now that, you know, some legalities and some, you know, it's not the answer I would have preferred, but it is the answer that I'll accept.
Okay.
Another question, and maybe this is somewhat of a statement. I'd like to have Mitch add one more weapon to his consideration. It's referred to on the internet as a sling bow, and basically what it is it's a slingshot that has a surround arrow rest on it, a whisker biscuit they were using and stuff like that. That it shoots 50 pounds. You know, it's quite accurate. You could put a sights on it or whatever and stuff like that. And I don't know if that would be considered a bow, or is that archery equipment or what? I don't really know, but that's something maybe.
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I seen it on The Walking Dead the other night. So we'll if that's a weapon that somebody's going to bring up, I'm sure we'll. Mitch, can we add that to something to look at, see if that might be an issue to come up? So
yeah, and on the caliber issue, you need to consider shotgun slugs as well. Those things are pretty heavy and stuff like that. One recommendation that we would like to make, considering the crossbows, is that, or a possibility is that you have a crossbow season separate from the archery season. Although you could have the timeline the same point and just have a regular crossbow season, maybe a shortened season during the archery season. But we would prefer that if you did that, that you take those tags out of the any weapon hunt rather than the archery hunt.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Do we have any more comments? I don't have any more comment cards. If not, I'm going to bring it back to the board for comment. And I have a few, but I'll wait till the end, so go ahead.
Just as we consider the survey, you asked questions about how to proceed. The survey is a direct question and answer based on just that question. When we start looking at the entire picture of things, we start, and if you start to, for the one question that the public said they'd love to have magnification on a muzzleloader. Well, that opens the door to shoot the new Remington Ultra muzzleloader with a 15 power scope and be accurate well past 500 yards. That definitely changes the intent of the word you don't like, primitive weapon seasons, and it certainly changes the dynamics. So if we start to recommend that we can use that one, it changes more than just putting a scope on a old Hawkins muzzleloader. It definitely opens that up. So I think we have to look at all of these in more than just the survey light. That survey was a specific question without really looking at all of the dynamics that it changes. And so as you look at those recommendations and come back to the board with those recommendations, I don't know that you can just use the survey results to write your recommendations.
Byron.
Some of the different racks and stuff has brought up some of the different comments that I read through the minutes and stuff of the racks that a lot of people suggested on the magnification for muzzleloaders that it be 4 power or less or something like that. So there are ways you can limit so we don't create a new weapon with the Remington, even though I just bought one of them.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say that too, that we discussed limiting that magnification so we wouldn't have that problem.
But the other thing is, I mean, that's a astounding response to get 17,000 people to respond to a survey like that. And I think we need to take that seriously. We've talked about it and talked about it over the years, and look at the things that came out of the results and go back out to the public and see if that's something they really want to implement going forward.
Anybody else have anything? Because I got some things I'd like to ask you to do.
I did have one comment.
Go
I
ahead, sir.
visited with a guy, kind of back to Lee's comment or question about having a separate season for crossbow. What if and I said, okay, if you've got so many days of archery, the last 2 days you can use a crossbow on the archery, but only
I'm going to say I think that it would be good to take this out. Are we thinking of taking it out with the proclamation? I think that'd be the best time. I think that's when you'd have the best turnout and the best information coming back through the process. As far as it goes with scopes on muzzleloaders, I've hunted with a muzzleloader quite a few times. I got a good one it shoots well. It's got a 1-power scope on it. What a piece of crap. What a piece of crap. Whoever invented a 1-power scope it's garbage. It makes it look smaller. I'd rather shoot a peep sight than a 1-powered scope. Actually, in the discussion I've had some discussion with some reps from some of the optics companies, and I was prepared for them to say, let's just take the lid off and let's sell scopes, whatever. Surprisingly enough, that's not what I got. A 2-power, I believe, is about real close, equal to your naked eye. The one guy told me, he says a 2-power is basically just a crosshair. It doesn't make it smaller. The other guy told me, he said if I was going to draw up the rule, he says, I think a 1 to 4 power is a great compromise. I've had a 4-power scope on a deer rifle for a few years, and finally I realized I had a hard time sighting in with a 4-power. That's not a lot of magnification. You can see a little better, but it's not a lot of magnification. So I think maybe a 1 to a 4-power would be either a straight 2 or like a 1 to a 4. If we're going to go over that, if the public wants to do that, then I think we're to the point there where we just take the lid off and, use whatever optic you wanted. But I think those might be some good things to ask as we go through the process as options, because I think if we go back through the RAC process and just say, what do you want, you're going to get 10,000 coming back. So I think, maybe some options would be good. I think maybe a straight 2-power would be a good solid option if that's what we want to go to. It's basically no magnification, but it doesn't make it smaller. A 1 to a 4, we're giving them a little leeway, but not a 20-power, and both those scopes, are available. You can get them. It's not like we're making something or putting something into law that people can't get. So the other thing that I have pretty strong feelings about is the crossbow. Anybody that's dealt much with archery or been around good compound bows, they're very efficient. They take a lot of practice. Just because your bow can sling an arrow out there 100 yards does not mean you can hit anything with it. With all the technology in that, my bow is still a 45, 50-yard at max weapon. Crossbows, for some reason, everybody thinks you can shoot endless amounts of distance with those things. That is absolutely not the case. They are not as efficient. They're not as handy. You can leave them cocked and you can set them out on your tree stand or out of your blind. That's why people like them. But to lug one around the hills, they're not what TV makes them out to be. And my personal opinion is, unless you have a permanent disability that is documented with the certificate from the division saying you're okay, I have a real hard time thinking they have any place in our archery season.
But they are efficient for zombies.
They are very efficient for zombies, but we're not doing the zombie proc. That's next month. So I'd have a hard time buying into that we need just to take the lid off crossbows. If somebody wants to hunt with one during the any weapon season, knock yourself out. But I don't think during archery that has any place in it.
Can I ask you a question? 2 years ago, maybe a little longer, 2.5, we set up a meeting. We took the wildlife board members out to Lee K Center to shoot those, because I think none of the board members, including myself, had ever fired a crossbow. It was quite enlightening to me. You may see on TV them shooting the crossbow a lot. You don't see them loading it a whole lot. Is that they're quite difficult to reload. But who attended that, or how many of you have fired a crossbow?
I have a crossbow. Yeah, it's.
You must have everything.
I'm here to tell you.
Back to the zombies.
They're cool for a minute. Yeah, sell it to Byron.
Anyway, it'd be it will never happen, but I would have been curious to see if those 19,000 people that took the surveys have ever owned or fired or hunted with a crossbow, if that would have changed a lot. Because certainly, I thought they were just awesome. You see them in all these hunting magazines, and it's like, I think I need that. I don't know why, but it looks really cool. After I went and fired one, I don't think, personally, it's not something that I was racing to go buy. They're slow to reload, but there are some advantages. So I'm not trying to sound. I think he's attended some of these meetings to speaking on that as well.
It kind of appears to me, just having been involved with this process for quite a few years now in the discussion, people that hunt with a crossbow in Utah hunt with one because they need to, because compound bow or a recurve is not really an option for one reason or another, but they hunt with them because they need to, because that's their option that allows them to still participate. I don't see a lot of people hunting with them because they want to. And of course, that's just my opinion, but those are a couple things I'd like to see go out, give some good solid options on the scope, either no scope, a 2-power, or a very low power 1 to 4, or just take the limit off. And I wouldn't like to see the crossbows be an option during the.
Just one more comment on the crossbows. If you look at the statistics, they're shooting 360, 370. The modern bow that you're talking about is 330, 340, even 350.
With a much, much heavier arrow.
Much heavier arrow. And so you're shooting a bolt out of a crossbow a few feet per second faster, but a lot less kinetic energy. And so there may be issues with wounding and other issues that come into play if we open up the crossbow.
Does anybody else on the board have any opinions or anything they'd like to see go out? Captain, is that kind of what you're looking for, or is there anything else you need or that you'd like us to chime in on as we kind of prepare to take this out? We don't want to leave you hanging. While we got the.
No, I think we can sit down and we'll hash it out and see what recommendations we'd like to bring before you in a month.
I think the survey pretty much spells it out. I think that's some pretty solid information myself. So,
yeah, I think your last slide on the survey pretty well lines out what you're going to take to the racks. As I look at it and listen to things, I think that pretty well sums up what you just said.
Yeah.
They're excited about this. They're not excited about that. And I think you're pretty close to what your recommendation would be right there, based on the survey and what the hunters want. Yeah, you're going to get all over the board on at the racks, all the comments. But I think your survey's pretty close to what ought to go out.
I just have a question out of curiosity. Was the agreement, was it Senator Jenkins, you say? Was the agreement with him that you would come out with something this year? Recommendation?
I don't want to go there. I don't know.
The reason I ask is I did have one guy ask me, can you put an age on something like that, where that if you're over 65 or 70 or however, how old are you, Byron?
I qualify.
If you're over 90, you can you could use a crossbow or something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be something we recommend.
We have anything else? Anything further from you or from the?
I think we're good. I did have one other request. Justin sitting in the back there, he felt kind of bad that he wasn't up here presenting this to
Well, I need Justin to come to the front right now anyway.
Okay, you know
So
what
Justin, would you please come to the front?
It's a special day for him.
It's a special day for Justin. Come to the front. And I don't mean the front there, I mean the front right here.
So we can actually hit you with our cross.
Is that what the gavel's for?
Yes. Come up front. Turn around. Face the good people. Today is Justin's birthday. Don't leave. Don't leave. Today is Justin's birthday, so on behalf of the Wildlife Board and all the good people of the state of Utah that love to hunt and fish, Justin, we'd like to wish you a happy birthday and tell you thank you very much for all your hard work on our behalf. Okay, now go sit down. You're taking up my time. That's what I can't even remember what it feels like to be 21, but Justin can legally buy beer now. All right, I guess we're ready to move on to. Do we need a motion on any of that, or that's just kind of a relax? I know, that's what I said. Huh? Fine. That's the good part about Stacy. It doesn't bother her to growl at you if she thinks you need it. So we're now to the conservation permit audit. Oh. Actually, this is my mistake. It's the annual report.
I was
right?
Gonna sit down.
Don't sit down.
Okay.
Okay, it's the annual report by Mr. Bill Bates, our wildlife section chief. So we'll turn the time over to Bill.
Just before I started, I'd just like to mention what our plans are with what we just discussed with the weapons technologies. And we have an in-house meeting planned in the next couple of weeks where we're going to get together and kind of talk through the input we've received today and through the survey from RACs. And we'll come up with a recommendation, and our plan right now is to bring any changes through with the big game guidebook, in November. So coming
Awesome.
right up.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so I've got a real brief presentation on the fiscal year 15 annual report for the Utah Conservation Permit Program. This last year we had 317 permits that were authorized through the Wildlife Board and sold through auctions by the various groups. That was based on, we had the 3-year multi-season permits that were authorized in 2013, and also the single-year permits we had, I think about 12 of those. This last year we had a record. We had over $4 million that were raised through conservation permits. It was just awesome. I mean, you just look at that graph, and we just continue to grow. I think I've calculated that we've received over $38 million from conservation permits since it started back when Mike and I were graduate students, about 1980 when we had their first statewide desert bighorn permit. And so, it's just been phenomenal, the amount of money that's been generated. This last year we had 7 groups that were involved: SFW, Mule Deer Foundation, FNAZ, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Safari Club, National Wild Turkey Federation, Utah Bowman Association, or Utah Bowman for Habitats probably would have been more correct. The Ducks Unlimited pulled out this last year. They were involved the previous 2 years and previous years before that, but part of the rule states that the permits, the funds generated from the permits are supposed to go to benefit the species from which they were generated, where possible, and they wanted to do things for ducks, and they just decided it wasn't a good fit, so they are using other methods to
Bill, I just got a text saying you need to speak into the microphone.
Oh, Stacy, thank you.
It wasn't Stacy. That was our former chairman, Mr. Jake Albrecht,
Oh,
who
hi, Jake.
texted me and said, I need Bill to speak up because he's old and he can't hear. So.
Well, I thought you were saying I was old.
No,
and I
you're
can't
not old.
speak.
Jake's old.
Okay. Sorry, Jake. I did think that was probably Stacy, though. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to start wearing one of those mics or something. Anyway, the Conservation Permit Program, I'd just like to say, that we've just had tremendous benefits from this program. We just have increased opportunities to hunt. I've been involved in a lot of discussions over the last 2 months over why do we hunt, is hunting ethical, and all those kind of things. Are conservation permits ethical, et cetera, but sportsmen have really benefited. We've spent over $130 million over the last 10 years on habitat work. We're starting to see deer populations rebound. Those projects wouldn't be possible without this program. In my career, I haven't been around as long as Roger, and I was very impressed with the accolades he received today, and they were well deserved. But in my career, I have never had the opportunity to manage with the kind of data we have now. The deer survival study, the elk movement study, those kind of things. We're doing some research on dusky grouse. The information we're learning now is as a result of the money we've been able to raise through conservation permits, and also all the transplants that have been done. So anyway, that's all I had. You've got the report. It details, how much each of the different groups raised, and also has a list of the different projects. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions if there are any.
Can you tell me roughly how many acres we treated last year?
Oh, I wish Ashley was here. Mike, do you know? Yeah, around 100,000.
Did you say a typical average is 100,000?
Yes.
Can you, any guess as to how many acres the rest of the country did combined? Because I don't think it's 100,000.
Probably not. Yeah, we talk about this at this year at WAFWA, the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. They had a whole session in the plenary session about habitat restoration, and we are way ahead of the ball game because of the vision of Kevin Conway and others in the past. And I still remember the meeting. He set us down and said, we're going to start doing 10,000 acres per year per region. And I was a habitat manager at the time, and I just thought it was insane. But we've been able to pull it off, and it's because of the funds that have been available and the good cooperation we've had with the groups, and also with other partners. So
Back to that last slide while you're talking.
I can certainly try. I might have to, since I'm at the end of the show, I'll have to. There we go. Previous. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we've treated 1.14 million acres at a cost of $130 million from 2005 to 2013. That's 8 years, so the average is slightly higher than 100,000 per year. Let me tell you another good thing about these conservation permits. Our watershed restoration initiative has lots of partners in it, and sometimes there's some projects that we as biologists think are maybe a little bit more important than maybe some of our other partners feel, and we've been able to take those to the conservation permit or conservation groups and get some of those projects funded that I feel have been very beneficial. So,
not only that, you take this money and leverage it with
absolutely
federal dollars and matching dollars, and it really opens up the playbook.
It does. Mm-hmm.
An example of something going on now. Sorry, Byron. It's been challenging for this board and the central and northeastern RACs to deal with this Wasatch elk herd issue. Folks believing there's too many elk, not enough elk, they're in the wrong places, what's happening. And we're able to use this type of dollar along with some of our Pittman Robbins dollars to go do some research so that you're able to make better informed decisions or better informed strategies about how we control our herds, but also how we create the right opportunity out there. Again, these are the kind of dollars that are available. A project like that is many hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together, and it occurs over a number of years. And most state wildlife agencies don't really have a place to go find that kind of money. I know that. I know the directors from all these states, and they're envious of these sorts of programs because they can't just snap their fingers and have $300,000 available to go do a survey, and their money's tied up in vehicles and personnel and different things. And you know, it's not that available to react as quickly as we can with having these resources.
Right.
Byron?
I just want to thank Bill and all the conservation partners that participated in this program over the years, because it is one of the greatest things that's happened in the last century. You know, you look at the results of hunters this year, everybody's happy with what's going on, and just to continue this. But one thing I've always felt we didn't do enough in that is to promote it and educate the public about what we're really doing out there, how hunters' dollars are really going back on the ground, because I know a lot of people don't really know how the program works, what the benefits are and stuff like that. So I just think there needs to be more public education awareness of how important this program is and who's basically funding that program through conservation permits. So keep up the good work.
There was actually a program on KUAR a couple of days ago about why hunt, and I would have loved to have been a panelist on that discussion to talk about those issues, about just how conservation groups or how the funding from sportsmen has paid for the recovery and management of wildlife in North America. So.
We got any other questions or anything from the board?
Yeah, I just might say a little bit more on that. We need to educate our people and let them know what we've got, because we've had conservation permits.
Right.
It's brought us on top, and those other states are very envious of what we've got and how we've done it. So we need to let everybody know, because we get a little bit of guff from that, but we need to let them know where we started and where we're at now, and we've came a long way. Thank you.
Any questions from the rack chairs any questions from the audience? Did anybody, I guess this went out to the racks? No. So I don't have to get rack chair reports. I don't have any comment cards or anything on it. Anybody have a comment? Yes, sir.
One thing I'd like to ask, in this program, is land acquisition ever involved in this, or is it just habitat improvement projects?
Well, it's not just habitat improvement. There's also the research we talked about and the transplants. That's where the majority of this goes. I would say, Greg, in the future
this isn't really focused to land acquisition, and we're not particularly in the land acquisition mode right now. There may have been some times in years past when a little bit of money may be contributed towards an acquisition, but we're not out aggressively acquiring land right now.
You leaned on your deal there.
Mike Canning, just wanted to add that this year several of the groups did put conservation permit money towards sage grouse conservation easements. They knew the importance there, and it also benefits big game. And so we're putting it towards land conservation, but not outright land acquisition. But that is a role that money can play.
Thank you. All right, I guess we're back to the board with the motion. Any other discussion?
I'm not clear what the motion needs to be.
I guess we
Mr.
just
Chairman.
accept the annual report. Just to accept and approve. Before I take a motion on that, though, I'm going to just throw my 2 cents in. I had a guy in an email the other day tell me that all the other states managed to do their habitat projects without selling permits. And I just happened to talk to a guy from another state that afternoon. I asked him, how much habitat work you do? And he said, well, we're really excited. We're doing 2,000 acres this year. And I thought, that's a tough spot to try to grow wildlife and to do the things, that on changing rangelands and all those kind of things. And that's great that he's doing 2,000 acres, but I'm glad we don't have to fight and skimp to do 2,000 acres. The other states are not able to do what we were able to do. They're just not, because of these dollars. So does it cost the hunters a little bit? Do we give up something in these permits? Yeah. But I firmly believe that we get back tenfold what we put into the program. So it's exciting to see all the good things going. And when we average in 100,000 acres a year, whatever it is, that's exciting. So, with that, do we have a motion to accept the audit, or excuse me, the report? The audit's next.
I'll make the motion.
All right. I seen Byron first. Who's the second? Calvin. Moved by Byron Bateman, seconded by Calvin Crandall, that we accept the annual report on the conservation permits. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Conservation permit audit by our Deputy Director, Mike Fowkes. Mike, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. See if I can bring this up real quick. Okay, I'm here covering for Kenny Johnson, our Administrative Services Section Chief. He's not in town, but he usually does this report. I'm happy to do it because it's such a great program and we had great results on the audit, so as we'll get into. But I wanted to thank Kenny and his staff, particularly Sarah Scott, who did a great job putting this this audit together for us. We're required by the rule, the conservation permit rule, to perform an annual audit on the participating organizations to make sure that there's transparency in the program and that everybody's following the rules. I will say this was, as Bill mentioned, this was a banner year for the conservation permit program. They raised a record amount of money and did a great job marketing. I wanted to say thanks to all participating organizations for the great job they've done in marketing these permits and getting the highest dollars available to contribute to the great program that we're doing. So, a small fraction of our limited entry permits and once-in-a-lifetime permits are awarded to conservation partners. Bill and his staff just went through the next iteration, the next 3-year iteration, and that will be presented later. There's a formula in rule that they follow, and Bill's staff does a great job in putting that together and making sure that we follow the rule. Conservation permits, has been mentioned, bring critical revenue to wildlife and particularly to habitat projects. It's been discussed, our watershed restoration program is the best in the United States, and we do great things with it. A big linchpin of that is the conservation permit dollars that we raise. Not only that, the conservation partners that we have, many of them represented here today, provide critical manpower for the projects on the ground. This report is for the 2015 permits that were out there. There were 317 permits awarded to conservation partners, and these permits are marketed and auctioned off to the highest bidder. The revenue is returned to the division for approved projects. 30% is directly contributed back to the division. That amounted to about $1.2 million this year. 60% are retained by the groups for division approved projects, and 10% is kept for administrative costs by each of the participating organizations. This audit ensures 3 things, and this is based on the rule, the language in the rule. Expenditures for projects are approved by the DWR before any work starts. Funds are kept in a separate federally insured bank account, and permit prices are reported at banquets match what is collected. I'm happy to report that we had 100% compliance with the monthly bank statement provisions, 100% compliance with funds kept in separate and secure bank accounts, and we had 150 permits that were selected to compare auction price with payment with 100% compliance as well there. So what was reported matched what we independently saw. And what we do is when our folks attend the banquets, they will jot down what the permits sell for, get that information to Kenny Johnson, and then we follow up and see if it matches up, and we have 100% compliance. Recommendations. The September 1st deadline has been a little bit problematic. All the groups are getting the money in. Sometimes the deadlines are missed, but we get the money in. The 30% has been returned to us. Groups should have the project payment transfers of the 10% administrative costs and the transfers of the account interest completed by September 1st deadline. What that means is they need to take that money out of that separate account. That's the money they get to keep, the organizations get to keep, and then they roll that into their other organization's account. And that way the only money that's in the account is the 60% that we work with on projects. The division will provide training of audit specifics when there's a personnel change within the group's reporting team. We're committed to making sure that the organizations have what they need to be successful in this program. So this is the spreadsheet that shows each of the organizations and the number of permits that they had in the first two columns there. The third column is the 2015 funds that were that are available to the organization for projects. That's the 60%. You'll see that totals $2.4 million this year. That's up $400,000 from last year. Carryover funds from previous years. This is they have 2 years to spend this money that they raise, and so there's a carryover, generally a carryover of money that remains in the bank account until projects are signed. That's at $3 million this year. So the total available funds for projects now is $5.4 million. That's column 5. You'll see funding that was spent on current projects at 1.59. So the required fund balance per audit is 3.891. That's the money that's in the bank now, and that matches our audit figures, and so everything is good to go. And then we have $1.7 million committed for funds in FY16. That is the report. If there are any questions, be happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board?
I just have one, and I don't know anything about the way these accounts work, but I'm assuming they're in accounts that are drawing interest. The individual organizations, do they keep all of the interest that is accrued during that time period? And I'm assuming that the 30% the division gets, does it go into an account, and is it drawing interest?
Yeah, the organizations can keep the interest on the money, which isn't a whole lot nowadays, but that was allowed through that. But yeah, we audit the 30% to make sure that it's there. That's really what.
But are you getting interest on the 30% that comes to the division? That just goes into your state.
The 30% that we get. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, we don't get it actually. So the state treasurer gets it. It's collected, but it doesn't come to us. So, but again, it's not a whole lot of money. So
that interest that's gained on their accounts on the 60%, they need to take that out by September 1st and deposit it in another account, so that the only money that's in there is the principal. But they do get to keep that interest.
Just to clarify, we talk about the 30, the 60, and the 10. In reality, the group gets 10. The Habitat gets 90.
That's correct. We approve all projects for that 60%.
So that 60%, even though the group still keeps it in an account, that money is allocated and dedicated to approved projects. So they can say what they get to choose and have a hand in what projects that goes to, but that money is still very much under the direction of the state and is spoken for and allocated really as soon as that permit is sold. We know if it's a $10,000 permit, $9,000 there's a project lined up and waiting for that $9,000. So it is there's no gray area. There's no room for slush. It's that money is accounted for, and from the minute it's raised, we know where it's at and where it's headed. So.
That's correct, and I'd encourage anybody who can to come to our annual meeting that we have, where we have the groups come in and they essentially bid on projects. We have a list of projects, and it's quite the event to see the amount of money that's put on the ground that comes from these organizations putting the money up from conservation permits and from elsewhere.
That's that's a great point. That's the thing the point I'd like to drive home, just for anybody here, anybody listening, is from the minute that permit is sold, 90% of that money is, it's in the works. There's projects lined up and it's going to work right off the bat, and it's accounted for. I think this is the most audited money on the planet myself, but there's no gray area with any of this stuff. So,
is the interest, back to that, is it discretionary, the use of that, or does that also have to go to on-the-ground projects?
No, the 10% is used for administrative costs and the interest as well, so they can use it for their internal, for whatever they need to use it for internally.
Okay.
I guess I don't have anything other than I do have a comment card. Do we have any questions? Rack chairs, audience, any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any timeline for projects to be completed once they're assigned?
No, I think each project's kind of its own animal. Some of them are stages. Part of it will be for 1 year, and they'll do another section of it the next year. And I think every project's kind of its own animal. And there is a Habitat Council and a committee that oversees all that, I believe.
Most of the habitat projects are time certain and get done within a year, but our research generally carries over several years, 3 to 5 years on many instances.
No other questions. I have 2 comment cards. The first one is Lee Tracy, and the next one is Mr. Don. So Lee.
Lee Tracy, United Wildlife Cooperative. We have several concerns with this. The board and the rest and the public needs to know that United Wildlife Cooperative is in favor of this program, and it is in fact an awesome program. In fact, we've had opportunities to work with some of these groups on some of these projects that are funded by this program, and we appreciate that. The concerns that we have, number one, is frankly the politics that plays after during this or because of this program. We have seen an increase in efforts to increase the limited entry units and thus the conservation tags. And while the conservation tags from these increased or these potentially increased units are viable and good, it does impact the average hunter. It impacts the general units. I've seen a lot of groups try to increase these limited entry units, but I haven't ever seen a group try and increase the general hunt units. I won't say any more about that, but just be aware that we feel that there's undue leverage generated by this program. The other concern we have is some of the once-in-a-lifetime tags and the percentages that are used in this program. Most of those, particularly the RAM units, that's real close to the guideline and stuff, and in fact, combined with the expo tags is quite a bit over the combined guidelines of those 2 units. Otherwise, we do in fact approve and appreciate the work that goes into this goes into this program by the organizations and stuff like that. It's not likely that we'll ever participate in it because we don't. That's just not. Our philosophy is a little bit different, and but we will participate as far as manpower and cooperation with the groups that do these things. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. Don?
Thanks. Just a few quick comments.
Can you state your name for the
Dante.
record?
I've been asked to speak basically now all over the world to talk about this program, so it's not just the United States. I was in British Columbia the other day, and there was a magazine about the best guides and outfitters in the world in the year 2000. And it featured Utah's Bucks and Bulls, the best private ranches in Utah in the year 2000. The animals in that magazine wouldn't be as good as our general season units today. It's literally unbelievable what's happened, number one. Clearly, the value that these permits bring comes from the decisions you make on quality, quantity, season dates, etc. And we fine-tuned this system over time, and it's an exponential return with just a little minor adjustment. So thank you for taking the time, racks, boards, to do all that stuff. I wanted to give you just one little quick historical perspective. Back when I was in graduate school, came with a guy named John Kimball, the director. He was actually the assistant director. I mean, we're going way back. And we had 5 permits, and they were done in a silent bid. And we said, why don't we auction these? And so they said, we'll go talk to the governor. So we went up to Governor Bangerter, and he said, what's the purpose? We said, raise money. He said, auction the tags. So anyway, there's another little piece of history that goes way back to there. I just think that Kevin Conway's smiling down today. His vision of having a great general season deer hunt was his legacy, and we're literally seeing that today. And I can tell you that would not be without these permits and this money and the groups. We've also solved a lot of landowner issues that we couldn't solve until we had this money available. Lastly, I'm going to just say, John, you've had some good one-liners. So when we got our audit review, I kind of reminded me of a line out of the movie Top Gun, the big opening scene. We submit our audit, and then the auditor, we said we looked into it, and I said, how'd we do? And I said, were we good? And they said, no, you were fabulous.
Thank you. I don't have any further comment cards. Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment or fill out a card? Please come forward. All righty. I guess that brings it back to the board for a motion to accept the audit. Moved by Mr. Donnie Hunter. Do we have a second on the motion? Dr. Woodward seconds the motion. You got a second? All right. We got a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All righty, now we're back to Bill. Now, here's the deal. We got 10 minutes until noon. We got a couple items left that aren't going to take very much time. We're just going to bust through and get it done and then have lunch. Everybody all right with that? Okay. Bill, take it away.
While I'm bringing this up, I would just, I thought a little bit about the comment about, getting the word out on the, sorry, Stacy, on the value of this program. And I think with the birthday boy still sitting in the back, give him a challenge to help me for next year, tease out the number of permits that are available to the public because of the conservation permit program. Lee's comments were, something that people have voiced before. The public's concerned about that. We put about 4% of our limited entry permits into the conservation permit program. For bighorn sheep, it's about 13%. But I think that if we look at the number of hunting opportunities that have been generated by that, it more than compensates. So,
can I ask you a quick question, being you brought up bighorn sheep? Is there any other program that has had as direct an impact from this?
Oh, no.
As the bighorn sheep have?
Right. If you look at the number of transplants we've done, from the Santa Fe, Dirty Devil, down in the Zion, Caparowitz, all that, that all started from the nucleus there in the North and South San Juan and Canyonlands, and we branched from there. The Rockies have been brought in from out of state.
So there's quite a list of new herds that had none because of this.
Yeah. So if you look at the 40 some odd permits we have right now, if we would have just been still had just those original 3 units, we'd probably have like 5 permits now. So, you know, just the opportunity for the public, for the general sportsman, is just really increased. And so we need to get that message out. And you know, sometimes, you know, you have to have a light go off to understand what you need to get done. So, but I'm glad Justin is here to help me do that, because, you know.
Justin, for your birthday, we're giving you an assignment. Okay? Yeah, you're the light in all of our lives, Justin.
That is so scary.
That is a sad thing. I'm sad. I'm really sorry I said that.
You know,
Okay.
And sorry to interrupt, but
Please interrupt.
this is, you know, I don't think you need to, even when you talk about the results of this, you don't need to go back 20 or 30 or 40 years to see those. I'm going to go back 2 years. In the last couple years, we've created a brand new sheep unit on the Oak Creeks. We've created a brand new mountain goat on the unit on the Mount Dutton, on the LaSalle's. Within Buffalo a few years ago, you know, within 2 to 3 years of that, you as board members and rack chairs are going to be addressing permit numbers on those units. So we're not talking 30 years ago. We're talking 2013. You're going to be, you know, hunting. You're going to have public hunting those animals on those mountain ranges within the next few years. Those were made possible through this conservation permit program. So this is not only a long-term program, but a short-term program that shows real results in real time. So.
Last week I was able to go out into the Book Cliffs with Clint Sampson and do some on-the-ground classification of bison. 2008, 2009, we moved 79 bison from the Henry Mountains. Last week we counted on the ground 127. There's getting to be some bulls that are, you know, getting to be pretty nicey. A little bit more age would be good, but we're getting there. And so, yeah, that was really gratifying to see that. So I guess I probably better move on to what I'm supposed to talk about.
Go ahead, move on, Bill.
Okay. So we just wanted to come in and talk about the conservation permit recommendations for this next year. And September 21st, we held our draft here in this room. And I would just like to mention that Paul Gedge just did a fantastic job. The purpose of this picture is to show you all the technology that he found for us. And we don't even know where he got it, but we were glad that he did. We had this like 84-inch TV back there with all the permits on it. We had a screen for each individual group, and we had the 7 different groups there. And it was actually a lot of fun. And I appreciate everybody for participating and helping putting that together. The only negative comment that came out of the whole process of the draft, I mean, it was really a great process, was just from Stacy, and she told me to shut up.
How was that negative?
We, as a board, will issue an official reprimand for that comment.
Okay, at the draft, we had 314 permits that were allocated out of 323 possible, and I would like to mention that this year the wildlife staff was very diligent at going through the rule and looking at each eligible permit, and so we are confident that both for conservation permits and expo permits we followed the rule. I'll talk a little bit more about why all the permits weren't allocated through the draft, but post-draft we had a couple of trades that were initiated from the groups, and which is allowed by rule. And Utah Bowman for Habitat traded to SFW a Book Cliffs deer archery permit in exchange for a Henry Mountains cow only late permit and a LaSalle bull elk archery permit. Value was fairly comparable on those. Another, oops. Why did we quit working? There we go. Okay. Another trade was from Sportsmen for Wildlife. They traded to Fanaz a Caparowitz Desert Bighorn permit, or San Rafael Desert Bighorn, Newfoundland Rocky Mountains permit, in exchange for, as you can see, Dutton, Bull Elk, San Juan, Elk Ridge, Buck Deer, Southwest Desert Bull Elk, Ogden, Willard Peak Mountain Goat, Uintas Mountain Goat, Statewide Pronghorn, Statewide Bear, and Box Elder Grouse Creek Bull Elk. And again, it was fairly comparable. This shows the total number of permits. by group, the different permits that they got. You were actually given a table that has all that information in it. And moving on to single-year permits, we didn't issue any or we're not recommending that you authorize any single-year conservation permits this year. We had one application from the Big Game Hound Association. However, they didn't receive their 501c3 status in time as a nonprofit, and so they were ineligible. And so what we recommend is that those permits that we held out for single-year permits be held on to for next year. And we had one permit that could have been obtained through the draft, but because of the credits and everything that goes on, there wasn't a group, or the last group didn't have enough credits for the last one, so we actually have 9 permits that went unused. So anyway, that's all I have. Just like to recommend approval of those permits. We feel that it followed rule and feel everything is above board. And
what were the permits, and what are they going to be done? What are you going to use them for now?
The one permit that could have gone to multi-season permits was a North Slope early buck hunt. We had 8 of those that were recommended, and I might have priced those a little bit, guessed a little bit too high on the price, so I think that's the reason that one was left over. Everybody told me they weren't worth that much afterwards. The other ones, we had a couple of cow elk permits. There were some bear permits and some turkey permits that the Big Game Hound Association had expressed some interest in, and so that's why we didn't issue those. I suppose those could go back into the public draw, but I don't really. Kenny's not here to ask. Mike, do you know? Okay, we'll just put them in the public draw.
How many of them are there?
9 permits. Oh,
you auction them now?
7, 8. So there's 8 guys up here, and you have 9 leftover tags.
Mike?
All right. We can have yours. You don't need yours. I guess I get 2.
All right.
We could auction them off right now if you want. All righty. Any questions for Bill from the board? Any questions from the rack chairs? Yes, sir.
On the multi-season permits, how many multi-season permits for bull elk in the limited entry units are issued? Do you know approximately? Because I know that under the conservation permits, there are 28 multi-season permits for elk. And I'm just wondering how that balances out with the general public.
Okay, if you look at the rule, it states if you have this number of permits, and then we can issue X number of conservation permits. And so we followed that exactly. It ranges, I think, from like 2% to 7%, and the average was 4%. 4% of the permits for an individual unit went to the conservation permit program.
For the multi-season.
Right. Well, that includes everything. The single year as well, so that's all conservation permits. They all went into a pool. We had, I believe it was 323 eligible permits.
Rich, if I'm reading you right, you're talking about the premium elk tags.
Oh, premium.
Right? Yeah, how do we determine, like, that's one hunt on that unit?
Okay.
So there's only a few premium elk tags. We call them the multi-season now. So how do we determine how many of those are eligible to be conservation permits? Is that what you're asking?
I was thinking
Okay.
multi-year, so I'm going to ask Justin. He's the one that did this line by line, so.
You got Donnie playing Lawrence Welk music for Justin on his birthday. You must look old.
I don't recall exactly what the rule says on it, but there's a formula that once a certain number of permits comes into play, it can be a multi-season or it can be an any weapon or an archery. And so we followed that to the T on issuing these permits. But is your question, how many permits do we issue through the public
how do
draw
you
versus-
determine whether a limited entry bull elk permit it's a conservation permit would be a multi-season permit rather
Sure.
than just a rifle or an archery?
So generally for
For deer and elk, it's about 3% of the total permits. So if you have 100% or 100 permits issued through the public draw, 3 of those would be converted to multi-season. And
So does that, how do you determine whether it's a multi-season permit if it's a conservation permit?
How do we determine how many multi-season tags are eligible to be conservation permits? If there's only 5 of them, how do we know how many of those to take and make conservation permits out of?
yeah, and I'd have to pull up the rule, but in there it tells you if you're going to issue 1 permit, your first one would be in any weapon, your second one would be in any weapon, your third would be a multi-season.
That's the same rule for the conservation
Yes,
permit?
it is that is the rule for the conservation
permit.
permit. So it's formula driven, and I can't remember where it falls in that. You can only have 8 permits per unit for your, and one of those is a multi-season one, and I forget where that falls in, but I could look it up. So, yeah.
Justin, how hard is it to find that? Because we've talked about that 100 times, but I wouldn't
Give
mind.
me 2 minutes, I can pull up the rule and come back.
Okay, thank you. We have any other questions from the rack chairs? Any questions from the audience? No questions from the audience. I have one comment card. John Larson. If anybody else wants to make a comment, would you please fill out a card and come to the microphone?
It's good to be with you. My name is John Larson with Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife. We just wanted to take a minute and thank the division and their team for all the work that went into that bidding process. That was my first opportunity to be a part of that, and it was remarkable to watch what happens in that process and to see the money that was raised for wildlife in a short 2 hours, or where that money is going to be spent. And in future years, when we realized the funds off of those tags, it was just really fun. It was challenging a little bit to conduct to finalize your bid answer in 60 seconds, but the beauty of that was it led to a healthy competition among the groups, and it was fun to see that. Everything was handled perfectly, in my opinion, and it was very healthy. There were 7 groups participating there, and at the end of the day, it was just a great meeting. So, again, hats off to the division for their work there. My only recommendation would be in the next 3-year cycle when we do that. I'm 45 years young, and I think my eyesight's good, but I still couldn't see that giant TV. So maybe we can make that one a little bit bigger. That would help with the 60 seconds you have, but that's what I mean.
Right.
But truly, it was a great day, and to listen to the other conversations and the action items regarding
well played, Mike.
Conservation permits. That was well played. I just want to throw my 2 cents in there as well, and thank the state for allowing us to partner in this program. It's truly a great program. It does great things for our wildlife. You've heard that from everybody. I'm just a fly on the wall here echoing that, but it really has been great, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to participate in that. I would counsel, I think it's good to find a way to educate the public a little bit more about the process. I took a phone call from an outfitter in Cedar City just yesterday morning. He's a prominent outfitter. He's been doing it for a very long time, and he still didn't understand, so I walked him through each portion of the conservation permit process, from the bidding process to the sell, to the collection and to the funds, and where those funds go and how they're allocated. And those one-on-one conversations mean a lot, because you can really dial down and answer those deep-rooted questions that a lot of people have. It may be a little challenging to find a better way to do that on a broader spectrum, but I think it's a good idea to do that as well. I would echo that. Other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lee, you put several of them on your card, right? So I didn't forget you.
Actually, I did. Thanks.
Oh, all righty.
United Wildlife Cooperative accepts and approves the allocations, and with the disclaimers that I previously mentioned. We appreciate the work that this program provides, and all of the habitat, particularly the habitat information. And just by way of note, I notice the totals for the last 3 years, including this year, have been very nominal and pretty much the same. And we appreciate that they haven't increased or haven't changed that much. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. Does anybody else have anything? No further comment. I see that I believe most of the organizations that participated in the lottery, or in the draft, I should say, are here. So we appreciate them all being here and representing. With that, I guess we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion to approve the allocation. Let's do it. Is that a motion, Donnie, to approve the allocation? Do I have a second? Steve seconds the motion to approve the allocation. No further discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Justin,
Yeah.
welcome back.
I apologize for not having this off the top of my head. The way the rule states is for elk, your first permit is going to be a multi-season, and then after that, it goes. If you have more than one, it becomes any weapon. The third one's any weapon, then archery, and so on and so forth. So, if there's an elk permit, your first choice is the multi-season. So that's probably why there's a disproportionate amount of those in the conservation permit program compared to the public draw.
Thank you, sir. I know that's a long walk for somebody getting to be sold. We're almost done, folks. You're doing good. We'll get you out of here in short order. Our next item of business is our good Attorney General, Mr. Bushman, Mexican Gray. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you got to vote, don't you?
Didn't we vote? We voted. We voted. We can vote again. Anybody change their vote? Same vote. All right, Stacy, it's your turn. Sorry, Marty. I got ahead of myself and scratched Stacy off before she talked. It's habit after all these years of tongue lashings from.
I know my item will be short, but.
Well, let's hurry it up then.
I move we approve your presentation. As
All in
presented.
favor?
Aye.
Done.
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
All right. Give us our dates and so we can know when we're get to come see you again.
Perfect. I am Stacy Coons. I'm the coordinator of the Wildlife Board. However, today it feels like I'm just herding cats with all of you up there. So, all of the proposed dates for 2016 were placed out into your packet. They're very similar to the years that you had this year. There's no surprises there other than the Northern Region and the Central Region RACs have opted to flip dates this coming year. So Central RAC will meet on Tuesdays and the Northern Region RAC will meet on Wednesdays. That's really the only significant change that was made from last year to this year.
So just got to make sure January board meeting will be on Tuesday.
January board meetings are on Tuesday because of winter WAFWA, so that we
Because
can
of
get you
winter
guys to fly
waffle.
out. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's the only one I would have had a conflict with if it was on a Thursday or
Yeah,
Wednesday.
the rest
or
of them are on
anything, so.
Thursday for 2016, but remember your December of 2015 board meeting is on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay.
next year they'll all be on Thursdays except for January.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions or any concerns on any of these dates?
I got one, John.
Go ahead.
At the Southern RAC, they wanted to change the December meeting. Do you remember that discussion, Kevin?
Just the start time for our individual meeting, not the date.
Yeah, and we
okay.
adjusted for that. They wanted to change to 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so we're not changing the date at all. Just that we're going to start at 5.
5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, real people work till 5 or 5:30.
You know, some of us get to the board meeting on time too.
That have to do with working.
Coming from from Cedar City.
The board meeting that starts at 9.
Y'all can go to hell. I'm telling you that right now on the record. All right. All right. I guess we need to vote on this before it goes down the drain any farther. I shouldn't have to take that. All right. Too late. Here we go. All right. Any questions, anything on it? We're ready for a vote. All those who can approve our dates for the next year. Anybody want to make the motion? Steve and Calvin. Steve makes the motion. Calvin seconds the motion. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? You're done. Thank you. All right, Marty, now it's your turn. Mexican Gray Wolves.
Marty Bushman, Utah Attorney General's Office. Have a matter for you today that probably hasn't been on your radar, but this is the Mexican wolf. It's a unique subspecies that was recently listed as a subspecies, distinct from just the gray wolf. And The recovery program for this wolf has been ongoing for many, many years without a whole lot of success, but there is some move now with the Fish and Wildlife Service to reorganize a recovery team and to begin a new recovery plan that would actually set a trajectory for recovering the Mexican wolf. This is a species that 90% of its historic range occurred in Mexico, 10% in the United States, in southern Arizona, New Mexico, and in western Texas. And currently have about 100 wolves in the wild in southern Arizona and New Mexico, and possibly some wolves in Mexico, but not very certain how many they may have. Well, the service recently sent out a notice where they've invited Utah, along with Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, to participate in recovery team meetings. In this notice, there were a few items that were particularly troubling to us. One was they wanted to first look at population modeling, in other words, determine how many wolves we need to have in order to recover them. And then second, look at geography, that being where do we put wolves on the ground. The team is also being staffed with facilitators and science team members who have a documented history of wolf advocacy, which is a little concerning to us as well. The meetings they want to hold is at the COD Ranch, which is northeast of Tucson, Arizona. That is also a place where many of our environmental organizations that get involved in wolf matters have their annual meetings, which is just a little ironic in the whole thing is that they would select that place. And lastly, the service continues to seem to be open to the idea of recovering Mexican wolves in Utah and Colorado. Like I told you, 90% of the species range occurs in Mexico. There doesn't seem to be a real intent at this point to involve Mexico in a major way. There's insufficient prey base in southern Arizona and in southern New Mexico to support 700 some odd wolves, which the service believes would be necessary to recover them. Hence the need for Utah and Colorado. We have a prey base in southern Utah, but these species are not native to southern Utah or Colorado. And we are opposed to that, at least the Division of Wildlife Resources. For one, it's outside the species historic range, which we feel that the Fish and Wildlife Service does not authorize the recovery of species outside their historic range. The second, and perhaps the most problematic, is that if wolves, Mexican wolves, are put into Utah and buffered up against the northern gray wolf, there will be hybridization, and then we lose the unique genetics we're trying to conserve in the Mexican wolf. The wolf populations, Utah and southern Colorado, will never count towards recovery because they're not pure Mexican wolves, and that the whole thing could potentially compromise recovery, throughout the species range. The governors of the state of Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado are currently circulating a draft to send to the service expressing a point of view. We want to let that letter go out first before we actually have a letter from the Wildlife Board, but what I'm asking you here today is to consider and vote on whether you would approve a letter, and it would be a letter that you'd have to authorize John Bear, the chair, to sign, because we may not have another meeting before the letter needs to go out. So the content of the letter would be, we would ask them to revise their recovery planning approach to first look at geography, in other words, determine where the wolf historically occurred, and then determine numbers, rather than the other way around. We're going to ask them to replace the recovery team members, or not, the science team members and facilitators that have a long history of wolf advocacy with people that we feel are a little more neutral in where wolves should be, Mexican wolves, and select a neutral meeting location. And lastly, that we would request them, the service, to recover Mexican wolves exclusively south of Interstate 40 in Arizona and New Mexico, and not include Utah and Colorado in this recovery effort. So again, what I would ask is that the board would approve a letter with those four concepts that the chair could sign at a later date, and then we'd send that letter to the Fish and Wildlife Service expressing the board's opinion on some of these more recent recovery ideas.
Martin, I'm from the Basin. Can you review those 4 points again?
Yes. One is to revise the recovery planning approach to first look at geography, in other words, determine where the species historically occurred, and then determine populations.
So basically their historic range, identify their historic range.
Now, see, as it stands now, they want to look at numbers, so they'll come back with 700 to 900 wolves, and then they'll say, all right, now where do we put them? we want to determine
Who-
where they
who
can
has
go
mule deer to
before we
eat?
determine the numbers. The second is to replace some of these more non-neutral science team members and facilitators with people that have a more neutral position on wolves. Third is to select a neutral meeting location for our meetings. And the last is to recover Mexican wolves exclusively south of Interstate 40. For those of you who don't know, Interstate 40 goes about right through the middle of Arizona into Mexico, except cutting them off north to south.
Marty, I have a question about that. Does that not create a little bit of a contradiction with the first one? If you want them to study geography and identify where wolves were, are there not wolves that maybe have been north of that? And if that's the case, what's your justification for keeping them below I-40?
Right now, the only Mexican wolf populations in the United States is an experimental non-essential population, and it's all, that area is confined south of I-40. Under the service's current policies, any wolf that leaves that that experimental area and goes north, they will capture and return it. And that has been the one assurance to make sure we just don't have any natural dispersion of wolves into Utah, because once they're there, they're endangered. They're fully
Right.
listed everywhere in the United States. But what we really want is, we want Mexican wolves recovered in their historic range and in an area that they have a buffer from wolves from the north, that we don't get inbreeding, or not, excuse me, not inbreeding, but hybridization, and compromise the whole recovery effort.
Is that hybridization aspect going to be addressed in the letter?
Yes.
Marty, can I add to that? Mike, the I-40 line is an approximation of the historic boundary. The Mogollon Rim, most of the historic documentation of Mexican wolves is south of the Mogollon Rim. I-40 is an approximation of that line, and it's just an easier designation to say, you know, here's a hard line, and recovery is appropriate below it and not above it. And it's fairly consistent with what most people would consider the historic range of the species.
It just seemed to me, without actually seeing the wording, that first comment in there, the first point that you're trying to make, says if you're going to do some, and maybe I misheard you, but it sounded like do some research, document the historic range, essentially, or the geographic requirements, and then establish the numbers. But if you already know that, then
the two are going to be pretty closely associated. I mean, we want them to look at geography first, and as part of that is to look at the historic range, which has been historically designated as below.
I just didn't want
I-40.
there to be an opening for them to say, well, here's the geographic range, and it's 40.
Right, and
It is kind of additive. I think your point is correct. So probably the fourth one is saying, let's look at number one, the geography, but by number four, oh, by the way,
Yeah, make
here's
sure that
a
there's some kind of
a
a
position that we may have going into this.
This letter will
discussion.
be consistent with the governor's letters from all 4 states that are involved in this. We're not looking at
Mr. Bushman.
points that are thus far being circulated as key points that the governor's letter will address.
Marty? I just got one question. At the Tri-State, we talked about doing a joint letter with Utah and Colorado. Is that still going to be part of that, or the governor's letter is going to take care of that?
We're letting our governors send this to Secretary of Interior Jewell and Director Dan Ash of the Fish and Wildlife. So I feel like that's probably the most impactful statement that we can have. And each of the commissions or boards in these other states, I think, will probably independently submit something. So time is of the essence here, though. That's what's hanging us up a little bit now. The first scheduled meeting is December, somewhere around the 10th or somewhere, just 15th, something like that.
Another question. Is there going to be any word in there that we are adamantly opposed to the Mexican wolf?
That was my question. Is this hard line enough? Does this make a statement?
Make a very clear point. You know, our position, which is scientific, I mean, there's some social issues as well, but scientifically based, is we don't want to host a species that to try to attempt to recover it and in the process compromise the whole recovery, you know, by doing it. I think scientifically, socially, and legally, Mexican wolves should not be recovered in Utah.
Okay, I just want, like John said, I just want to make sure that it's strong enough to make the point that we do not want
Yes,
Mexican wolves.
Yeah, that's
it'll make that point.
so we can make the motion that we would support the letter with these 4 things: historical range, neutral members on the committee, neutral location, and not to be recovered south of I-40.
It should
Or
be
excuse
recovered-
me, anywhere but south of I-40, nothing north of I-40. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Before and the wolves read the signs like the deer can at the deer crossings. So
Perhaps.
Mr. Bushman, at the Western Association meeting than a year ago, the board commission from Arizona talked to me about a possible suit that Arizona was going to engage in with the Fish and Wildlife Services, and I understand that that's gone forward. How will that affect what we're talking about?
It won't at all. I mean, first of all, understand that Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado and Utah are all 100% on board and together that Mexican wolves should be recovered in their historic range, which does not include northern Arizona, southern Utah, northern New Mexico, southern Colorado. So that's one. The Arizona lawsuit filed suit against the Fish and Wildlife Service for failure to organize and create a recovery plan that would actually plot a course for recovering the species. The service is still using a 1982 recovery plan that has a population objective of 100 wolves. Service filed suit on that. New Mexico has sought to intervene in that lawsuit, Colorado, and we will be seeking to intervene in the coming couple of weeks as well to become involved in that so that we can have some say in the settlement negotiations.
Does that just kind of bring you to the table, keep an eye on what's going on, give you intervener status, and
involved in the negotiations? And what they're trying to establish in this primarily is a deadline for having a recovery plan completed. That's Arizona's principal claim. The case was consolidated with a lawsuit filed by, I think, Center for Biological Diversity that was similar but also had some other claims that caused us a little more concern. And so being involved with it, all 4 states thought that was an advisable thing to do.
okay. All righty.
I'll make the motion, John.
You'll make the motion, Byron. Motion being that we would support a letter to be written and submitted from the governor. Is that right?
No, from the Wildlife Board.
Or from the Wildlife Board that I would sign, but the
Basically, we're just authorizing you to sign this letter.
okay, that's right. Just making sure. Marty's
Draft
the
letter.
guy.
With those, the focus of those 4 points, the board will authorize John
To sign it.
Behalf. Yep.
All right, that's the motion. Moved and seconded by Byron, seconded by Calvin. All in favor? Any opposed? Pass unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I guess I'll be talking to you at a later time when you have that drawn up, and we'll go over it and get her signed. Okay?
Can I just ask a question? I think I ask this about every time, and probably the answer is the same, but have we heard anything more about the delisting of the northern gray wolf? And no, that's...
I was in Denver last week on the sage grouse decision, and I talked to some of the folks with the endangered species program, and with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I think it's pretty clear. Don't expect them to finalize a rule anytime soon to delist the gray wolf.
Can you twist their arm?
Aye.
Can we send Steve over there to put the heat on him, or what can we do?
Been frustrating. They received a lot of comments back, millions, when they proposed to delist the northern version of the gray wolf here, and I think this administration probably will sit tight and doing nothing on this one. So.
Does anybody else have anything on this? Miles? I'm going to grant Miles a couple minutes here.
Thank you. Miles Moretti, President and CEO of the Mule Deer Foundation. On the Mexican wolf issue, this is a big concern of our members in Colorado, Wyoming, or Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. And we're going to be heavily involved in this. Over 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I worked for the division, I actually was on a working group on the Mexican wolf that was incorporated then. We got to sit in on those of us from the States got to sit in on the recovery team, and it was interesting. It was great to sit and listen to the scientists talk, but it was also disheartening to hear that there was an agenda to move wolves as far north as they could. Being a state representative at the time, I said, we don't want them in Utah. One of the guys on the recovery team said, oh, there's plenty of prey base up in Utah. And I said, no, there's not. I said, they would devastate them. And he says, well, there's a lot of sheep and cattle. They can just they'll eat those when the deer are gone. So that was kind of the attitude. Some of those guys are still on the committee. But just so you know, I was recently appointed to the Wildlife Hunting and Heritage Conservation Council, which
I saw that. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm not bragging about it, but it's just an advisory group to the Department of the Interior and the Department of Agriculture. I represent big game groups, and this will be an issue that we'll be bringing forward to the Department of Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it'll be interesting to see the letters. We've asked to be part of some of these meetings, but right now they're not including, ironically, they're not including nonprofit NGO groups, wildlife groups, but on the recovery team there are people representing NGOs and nonprofit groups. So we've been kind of locked out of these hearings for now, but we'll continue to push forward that sportsmen and women can be have their voice heard on this issue, because the environmental groups are definitely being heard and pushing forward their agenda. But just want to let you know that we'll be fighting it from the top to as much as we can through this council and other ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Miles. Appreciate that. As far as action items go, that's all I have on our agenda for today. We do have, I guess we need to talk about Winter WAFWA. Where's it at? When is it? January 7th in San Diego. You're looking for one. Does anybody want to go? Byron wants to go? It's San Diego. Byron is interested. Is anybody else interested? We'll have you arm wrestle. Looks like Byron's the guy. Does anybody else have any other business to come before the board today? I want to thank all of our help and track chairs and everybody for coming and participating. It is 12:32. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All right, so moved. Everybody good? We are done. Thank you.